Mom, I promise I'll call you the second we land. Yes, before I even get off the plane. Olivia Jackson sighed into her phone, balancing it between her ear and shoulder as she dragged her weathered suitcase through the bustling terminal of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. The air hummed with the familiar symphony of travel announcements echoing through speakers, the rhythmic clicking of rolling luggage, and the constant buzz of thousands of conversations blending into white noise. For most passengers, it was just another Thursday morning. For 16-year-old Olivia Jackson, it was the day that could change her entire future. "I know you're nervous, baby, but you've got this." Her mother's voice crackled through the phone. "You've been preparing for this audition since you were 7 years old." Olivia swallowed hard, her free hand instinctively reaching down to touch the hard case that contained her most prized possession, a 19th century French cello that had been loaned to her by Mr. Collins, her first teacher. The instrument wasn't just wood and strings. It was her voice, her sanctuary, her future. Inside that case lay her ticket to Juilliard and the Reynolds Foundation scholarship that could make her dreams financially possible. "What if I'm not ready?" Olivia whispered, stopping near her gate as the insecurities she usually kept buried bubbled to the surface. "What if I get there and I freeze? What if—" "Olivia Marie Jackson," her mother interrupted firmly. "You are the girl who played Bach's Cello Suite No. 1 from memory when you were 9. You are the girl who practices 6 hours a day even on Christmas. You are my daughter, and you do not back down from challenges. You rise to them." Olivia closed her eyes, drawing strength from her mother's unwavering faith. Evelyn Jackson had raised her alone in their small apartment on the outskirts of Atlanta, working double shifts as a hospital nurse to afford Olivia's lessons. There had been countless sacrifices, missed recitals when shifts couldn't be swapped secondhand clothes so lesson fees could be paid, and many nights where Evelyn fell asleep on the couch still wearing her scrubs, lulled to sleep by the sound of Olivia's practicing. "You're right," Olivia said, straightening her shoulders. "I'm ready. I've got this." "That's my girl. Now, do you have everything?" Olivia mentally ran through her checklist. Cello sheet music, audition, confirmation, hotel reservation, extra strings, rosin ID, boarding pass. "Yes, I think I'm all set." "And emergency cash." "Mom? Yes. The envelope in the inside pocket of my backpack, just like you showed me." Olivia couldn't help but smile at her mother's protectiveness. She remembered the night 8 weeks ago when the invitation from Juilliard had arrived. They'd been eating microwaved leftover pasta when she'd checked her email on their shared laptop. The scream she'd let out had nearly caused her mother to choke. They'd danced around their tiny living room, the dishes' forgotten tears streaming down both their faces. That night had made all the sacrifices worth it. The birthday parties missed for practice, the social life she'd never really had, the relentless focus that had sometimes felt like a burden. "Gate 34A, now boarding for New York LaGuardia, all zones," announced a voice over the PA system. "That's me, Mom. I've got to go." "I love you, baby. Remember, you've already won just by getting this audition. Everything else is gravy." "I love you too." Olivia tucked her phone away and approached the gate agent, a petite woman with a kind smile. "Excuse me, I have a special item. My cello. I called ahead about it." The agent nodded, checking her computer. "Yes, Ms. Jackson, we have your request here. We'll pre-board you so you can secure the instrument in the closet at the front of the aircraft. The flight attendants will help you." 5 minutes later, Olivia was walking down the jet bridge, the weight of her cello case a comforting presence in her hand. A flight attendant met her at the aircraft door, a young Hispanic man whose name tag read Kevin Rodriguez. "You must be our musician," he said with a warm smile. "I'll help you store that safely." "Thank you," Olivia said, reluctantly handing over her precious cargo. She watched anxiously as Kevin carefully placed it in the closet, making sure it was secure. "Don't worry," he assured her, noting her expression. "I used to play violin. I know how important instruments are. It'll be right here waiting for you when we land." Relieved, Olivia made her way to her assigned seat, 22B, a middle seat in the economy section. It wasn't ideal, but the ticket had been purchased with careful budgeting and the last of her mother's airline miles. She settled in, placing her backpack under the seat in front of her. The window seat 22A was already occupied by a woman in her 30s with warm brown eyes and a tablet open to what looked like architectural designs. She gave Olivia a brief, polite smile before returning to her work. The nameplate on her tablet case read, "Sofia Alvarez." "First time flying alone?" Sofia asked unexpectedly, looking up from her work. "Is it that obvious?" Olivia asked with a small laugh. "Just a bit," Sofia replied with a kind smile. "The careful way you're holding yourself. I was the same way my first solo flight, going somewhere exciting." "Juilliard, for an audition," Olivia said, surprised at how easy it was to talk to this stranger. "Wow, impressive. I wanted to be a pianist when I was younger, but architecture won out in the end. Still, I remember those nerve-wracking auditions. You'll do great." This brief, unexpected connection helped ease Olivia's anxiety. She pulled out her phone, plugged in her earbuds, and queued up Bach's Cello Suite No. 1, the piece she would be performing for her audition. She closed her eyes, letting the familiar notes wash over her as she mentally traced the fingerings on her thigh, a practice habit she'd developed years ago. She thought back to her first cello lesson at age 7. Her elementary school had hosted a musical instrument demonstration, and the moment the cellist had drawn the bow across the strings, Olivia had felt something awaken inside her. She'd begged her mother for lessons, not understanding then what a financial strain it would be. When Mr. Collins, the music teacher at the community center, had recognized her talent and offered to teach her at a reduced rate, it had felt like destiny. The memory of her first recital flooded back. Her too-big dress from the thrift store, her hands shaking so badly she'd thought she might drop her bow. But then she'd started to play, and everything else had fallen away. There had been only the music flowing through her like a current. That feeling had never changed even after thousands of hours of practice and dozens of performances. Through middle school, she'd practiced before dawn and after homework. Through high school, she'd declined parties and dating to focus on her music. Some kids had called her obsessed. Others had simply called her weird. But when she played, none of that mattered. The cello didn't care about her secondhand clothes or her free lunch status. It responded purely to her skill, her emotion, her dedication. Her thoughts were interrupted by the continued boarding process. The aisle was filling with passengers stowing luggage and finding seats. Olivia glanced at the still empty seat beside her 22C, wondering who her travel companion would be. She didn't have to wonder long. The energy in the cabin shifted subtly like a drop in barometric pressure before a storm. Two figures moved down the aisle, not like passengers, but like inspectors evaluating property. They moved with the confidence of people accustomed to deference, their expressions suggesting mild displeasure at the basic indignity of commercial air travel. The man was tall and broad-shouldered in his late 50s, with silver-streaked dark hair and a deep tan that spoke of regular golf outings or yacht excursions. He wore a light blue button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled to the elbows, revealing an expensive watch and tailored khaki pants that probably cost more than Olivia's entire wardrobe. His companion was a slim woman of similar age, her platinum blonde hair styled in an immaculate bob. She wore white linen pants, a silk blouse, and enough gold jewelry to stock a small boutique. Her face had the taut, polished look of recent cosmetic work. They paused in the aisle, consulting their boarding passes and then looking at the row numbers. The man's eyes locked on the seat numbers above Olivia's row, then shifted to Olivia herself. His expression changed almost imperceptibly. A slight narrowing of the eyes, a tightening of the lips. "Douglas," the woman said, her voice carrying a sharp nasal tone that cut through the ambient noise. "Is this us?" The man, Douglas, didn't answer immediately. His gaze was still fixed on Olivia, who shifted uncomfortably under the scrutiny. It was a familiar look, one she'd encountered before, the quick assessment, judgment, and dismissal based solely on the color of her skin and her youthful appearance in a simple hoodie and jeans. "Yes, Elizabeth," he finally replied, his voice tight. "22C and 22D. Elizabeth peered around her husband, taking in Olivia with the same evaluating gaze. She leaned closer to Douglas, whispering something in his ear. Though Olivia couldn't hear the words, the expression and body language were clear enough. Elizabeth Foster didn't want to sit next to her. Sofia Alvarez glanced up from her tablet, observing the interaction with narrowed eyes. She shifted slightly in her seat, moving almost imperceptibly closer to Olivia in what seemed like a subtle gesture of solidarity. Olivia felt heat rise to her cheeks. She focused on her phone screen, pretending to be absorbed in something important, wishing she could disappear into the seat. The familiar feeling of being both hypervisible and completely invisible at the same time washed over her, a contradiction that had followed her through too many white spaces. Instead of taking his seat, Douglas raised his hand to flag down a passing flight attendant. Kevin Rodriguez approached with a professional smile. "How can I help you, sir?" he asked. Douglas gestured vaguely toward Olivia's row. "There seems to be a problem with our seating assignment." Kevin consulted the boarding passes Douglas held out. "You're in 22C and your wife is in 22D across the aisle. Is there an issue?" Elizabeth stepped forward, her perfume enveloping Olivia in a cloying cloud. "The problem," she said in a stage whisper that was clearly meant to be heard, "is that we are not comfortable with this arrangement." Sofia Alvarez looked up sharply from her tablet, her eyebrows rising. Olivia kept her eyes down, her body tense, the music in her earbuds no longer registering. Kevin looked confused. "I'm not sure I understand. Your seats are correctly assigned." "It's quite simple." Douglas said, his voice low and condescending. "My wife and I paid for a comfortable flight. We have certain expectations. We would like to be moved." The meaning behind his words hung in the air, an ugly implication that no one was acknowledging directly. Olivia felt as though she couldn't breathe, trapped in her middle seat with nowhere to escape as she was being discussed as if she were an inconvenient piece of luggage. Kevin's professional smile faltered slightly. "Sir, the flight is nearly full. I don't believe there are any other pairs of seats available in the main cabin." "Then find something," Elizabeth snapped, her pleasant facade cracking. "Surely you can move someone. Perhaps," she added with a dismissive flick of her eyes toward Olivia, "you can move her to another seat, a back row perhaps." The suggestion was clear and repulsive. Olivia wasn't just an inconvenience. She was an object to be relocated because of her race. The humiliation burned in her chest, caught between anger and shame. Sofia Alvarez closed her tablet with a sharp click. "For heaven's sake," she said loudly, "just sit down. You're holding up the entire plane." Douglas turned to her, his expression hardening. "I suggest you mind your own business. This is between us and the airline staff." "Actually, it became my business when you decided to make a scene about sitting next to this young woman," Sofia replied, her voice cool but firm. "I've been watching your faces since you spotted her. This isn't about seating arrangements. This is about prejudice, plain and simple." Douglas's face flushed with anger. "How dare you? No, how dare you?" Sofia cut in. "This girl hasn't said or done a single thing to warrant your behavior. I'm an architect who designs public spaces for a living, so believe me when I tell you that the problem here isn't the seating arrangement. It's your attitude." Other passengers were beginning to notice the holdup. The boarding process had stalled, creating a backup in the aisle. Whispers rippled through nearby rows as people craned their necks to see what was causing the delay. Olivia sat frozen, her hands clenched in her lap. She thought of her mother's words. You rise to challenges. But how was she supposed to rise to this? What was the appropriate response to such a blatant display of prejudice? She'd faced microaggressions before. The security guard who followed her through the music store, the teacher who expressed surprise at her articulate speech, the strangers who questioned if she really played the cello or just carried it for someone else. But never something so overt, so public, and with no escape route. A new presence moved down the aisle. Another flight attendant, older than Kevin, with an air of authority that immediately commanded attention. Her name tag identified her as Carmen Diaz Purser. Kevin quickly briefed her in hushed tones. Carmen's expression remained neutral, but a certain steeliness entered her posture as she turned to face the Fosters. "Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. Foster." She began glancing at their boarding passes. "My name is Carmen, and I'm the lead flight attendant on this flight. I understand there's some concern about your seating." "Concern is putting it mildly," Douglas huffed. "We refuse to sit here." "May I ask why?" Carmen's tone was even and polite, but her question forced the issue into the open. Douglas hesitated clearly, not expecting to be challenged so directly. "It's a matter of personal space. We just don't feel it's a suitable environment for our flight to New York." "A suitable environment," Carmen repeated, letting the absurd phrase hang in the air. She then turned slightly and gave Olivia a warm, reassuring look. It was the first acknowledgement that Olivia was a person, not a problem. A small gesture of kindness that stopped the trembling in her hands. "I'm sorry," Carmen continued, turning back to the Fosters, her voice firm. "The environment in this row is exactly the same as in every other row. This is your assigned seat. The passenger in 22B is in her assigned seat. I must ask you to please take your seat so we can close the cabin door and depart on schedule." Elizabeth scoffed an ugly sound of entitlement. "This is unbelievable. We are frequent flyers Platinum members. We pay your salary. I want to speak to the captain." Carmen's professional demeanor remained intact, but her eyes now held a glint of resolve. "The captain is preparing the aircraft for takeoff. He is not available to settle seating disputes. You have two options. You can take your assigned seats, or you can deplane. Which would you prefer?" The ultimatum was laid bare. There was no negotiation, no moving Olivia, no special treatment, just compliance or removal. For the Fosters, a couple who had likely bulldozed their way through life with threats and complaints, this was an unthinkable response. Their faces, already contorted with arrogance, twisted into expressions of sputtering rage. "Deplane." Douglas finally managed his face turning a mottled red. "You can't be serious. Do you have any idea who I am?" "With all due respect, sir," Carmen replied calmly. "Right now you are passenger Douglas Foster in seat 22C, and you are preventing an on-time departure for over 150 other people. Your identity beyond that has no bearing on airline policy or federal aviation regulations." From a few rows back, a man's voice called out, "Good for you, get him off the plane." A smattering of applause broke out quickly, shushed, but unmistakably present. The tide of public opinion in the pressurized tube of the airplane had turned decisively against the Fosters. Elizabeth, seeing her husband's bullying tactics fail, tried a different approach. Feigned victimhood. "We are being harassed," she declared, her voice rising in pitch. "We feel threatened by this young woman." She gestured vaguely toward Olivia. "She was listening to loud music. She was glaring at us." It was a clumsy, pathetic lie, and everyone who had been watching knew it. Olivia hadn't said a word, hadn't made a single hostile gesture. Sofia Alvarez had had enough. "That is an absolute fabrication," she said sharply. "This girl has been silent since she sat down. She even had her eyes closed, listening to music when you arrived. You two are the only ones causing a problem. You should be ashamed of yourselves." Another passenger from across the aisle chimed in. "I saw the whole thing too. The girl didn't do anything." The direct confrontation from other passengers seemed to break the last of the Fosters' composure. Douglas turned on Carmen, his voice now a low growl. "I am not going to be spoken to this way. We paid for our tickets. We will sit here if we want, but we demand that she be moved. Find her another seat. Now." Carmen knew they had crossed the line. By explicitly and publicly demanding a passenger be moved based on what was transparently racial prejudice, they had gone from being merely unpleasant to creating a discriminatory incident. She spoke into the small handset used to communicate with the crew. "David, this is Carmen. I need you to call security to the jet bridge. We have a Code 3 refusal to comply with crew instructions. 2 passengers for removal." The words security and removal echoed through the cabin. A collective gasp went through the passengers. This was no longer just a delay. It was an event. Douglas Foster's jaw dropped. "You're calling security on us. You have repeatedly refused to follow a direct instruction from the flight crew, and you are creating a disturbance that is intimidating to another passenger and disruptive to the entire flight." Carmen stated, her voice a calm, factual recitation. "That gives us every right to refuse service and remove you from the aircraft. The captain has already been informed and has authorized it. His final word on the matter is that this airline has a zero-tolerance policy for harassment and discrimination. His exact words were, 'Get them off my plane.'" 2 uniformed airport security officers appeared at the cabin door, their presence immediately shifting the atmosphere from tense to critical. The gate agent David stood behind them, his face grim. "Sir, ma'am," Carmen said, her voice softening slightly in a final perfunctory offer of a graceful exit. "You can gather your belongings and leave peacefully, or security can escort you. The choice is yours." For a breathtaking moment it seemed Douglas Foster might actually try to physically resist. He puffed out his chest and took a step toward Carmen, but then he saw the unwavering stares of the security officers, the sea of phone cameras pointed in his direction, and the cold, hard reality of his defeat. His face, a canvas of fury and indignation, finally crumbled into a mask of bitter resentment. "Fine," he snarled, yanking his carry-on from the overhead bin with such force that it nearly hit the passenger across the aisle. "Fine. We'll be reporting all of you. Every single one. You'll be hearing from our lawyer. This airline will rue the day it treated Douglas and Elizabeth Foster this way." As they collected their belongings, a venomous silence fell over the plane. They shot one last hateful glare at Olivia, a look so filled with spite it made her flinch. Then, under the watchful eyes of security, they began their long, humiliating walk of shame back up the aisle they had so arrogantly descended just minutes before. The cabin remained silent, but as soon as the couple had passed, a low murmur of approval and relief rippled through the passengers. The poison had been excised. But for Carmen Diaz, the job wasn't done. The perpetrators were gone, but the victim was still there sitting stunned and silent in seat 22B. A wrong had been committed, and simply removing the cause wasn't enough. For justice to be truly served, the balance needed to be restored. With the Fosters gone and the cabin door finally sealed, a sense of calm began to return to the aircraft. The flight attendants went about their final checks movements crisp and efficient. But Carmen Diaz walked directly back to row 22. She knelt down in the aisle, bringing herself to eye level with Olivia, who was still staring blankly at the seat back, her hands clenched in her lap. The earbuds were still in her ears, but she wasn't listening to the music anymore. "Olivia, is it?" Carmen asked gently, having seen her name on the passenger manifest. Olivia looked up, startled. Her eyes were wide and glistening, though no tears had fallen. She nodded numbly. "My name is Carmen." "On behalf of the entire crew, I am so sorry you had to experience that. That was unacceptable, and it is not what this airline stands for. Are you okay?" The simple, direct question, delivered with such genuine warmth, was what finally broke through Olivia's shock. She swallowed hard and nodded again, unable to find her voice. The kindness felt more overwhelming than the cruelty had. "I know you are," Carmen continued with a smile. "But we're going to make it better." She stood up and gestured toward the front of the plane. "Grab your backpack, please. You're not sitting here anymore." A flash of panic crossed Olivia's face. Was she being moved to the back after all? Had the Fosters somehow won even in their absence, Carmen saw the fear in her eyes and immediately corrected herself. "Oh, honey, no, not like that. We're moving you up. Come with me." Olivia slowly, hesitantly reached down and pulled her backpack from under the seat. Sofia Alvarez gave her a huge, encouraging smile and a thumbs up. "You handled that with incredible grace," Sofia said warmly. "Here's my card. I'd love to hear how your audition goes. And if you ever need architecture advice for concert halls," she added with a small laugh. Touched by the unexpected connection, Olivia took the business card and slipped it into her pocket. As she stepped into the aisle, a few nearby passengers who had witnessed the whole ordeal broke into a quiet but heartfelt round of applause. The sound was a balm on her raw nerves. She followed Carmen up the narrow aisle past the Economy Plus section through the curtain that separated the classes. As she stepped through, it was like entering another world. The cramped, bustling rows of 3 were replaced by spacious pods, each with a plush leather seat that looked more like an armchair. The air smelled faintly of warm nuts and clean linen. Carmen stopped at a window seat pod. "This is you now," she said with a broad, triumphant smile. "The gentleman who was here agreed to swap with your original seat. He was a perfect dear about it." Olivia stared at the seat, her mind struggling to catch up. The large screen, the neatly folded blanket, the bottle of water already waiting. It was a world away from 22B. I can't," Olivia stammered, feeling a wave of imposter syndrome. "I didn't pay for this." "You paid for a safe and comfortable flight to New York, which you were denied," Carmen said firmly, her hand resting reassuringly on Olivia's shoulder. "Consider this a long overdue correction and an apology from us. Now sit down, get comfortable. Can I get you anything before takeoff? A glass of orange juice water." Olivia finally managed a small smile as she slid into the impossibly comfortable seat. She stowed her backpack and looked out the window, watching the ground crew scurry below. Just before Carmen left, she leaned in one last time. "And for the record," she whispered, "that little performance they put on was recorded by at least 10 different people. I have a feeling their day is about to get a whole lot worse." "Thank you for standing up for me," Olivia said softly. "Not everyone would have." Carmen's expression softened. "You know I have a daughter about your age. I'd hope someone would do the same for her." She straightened up, adjusting her uniform jacket. "My parents came from Guatemala when I was little. I know what it's like to be treated as less than. 24 years in this job and I still see it. But not today. Not on my watch." This small personal revelation made Carmen feel more like a real person to Olivia, not just an authority figure in a uniform. It created a connection that transcended the typical passenger-crew dynamic. As the plane finally pushed back from the gate, Olivia leaned her head against the cool glass of the window. She watched as the terminal slid by, and for a fleeting moment she thought she saw 2 figures standing near a service desk gesticulating wildly. Douglas and Elizabeth Foster, stranded and furious, were watching their plane, her plane, taxi toward the runway without them. They had tried to make her feel small to cast her out, but instead she was being lifted up literally and figuratively while they were left behind, grounded by the weight of their own ugliness. It wasn't revenge, she thought. It felt like balance. The world for a moment had tilted back in the right direction. The ascent was smooth, and as the plane leveled out at cruising altitude, the first-class cabin settled into a state of serene calm. A flight attendant came by and offered Olivia a warm towel, followed by a menu that looked like it belonged in a high-end restaurant. She ordered a ginger ale and a bowl of warm nuts, feeling like she was in a movie. "First time in first class?" the attendant asked with a friendly smile. "That obvious?" Olivia replied with a small laugh. "I still remember my first time," he confided. "I was 7 and my dad got upgraded on a business trip. I thought the warm towels were magic." The brief exchange made Olivia relax a bit more. Maybe she did belong here after all. The sheer absurdity of the situation, starting her journey in humiliation and now sitting in the lap of luxury, was not lost on her. She tried to return to Bach in her mind, but her thoughts were still racing. She thought about the Fosters, wondering what would happen to them. She thought about Carmen and the flight crew, grateful for their strength and kindness. She replayed the whole incident in her head, feeling the sting of it lessen with each passing minute, replaced by a strange, burgeoning sense of confidence. The man in the seat across the aisle had been quiet throughout the whole boarding drama. He was in his late 60s with kind eyes, a neatly trimmed gray beard, and an air of quiet authority. He was dressed in a simple but impeccably tailored suit and had been reading a thick hardcover book. He caught her eye and gave her a gentle, sympathetic smile. "Quite a dramatic start to your trip," he said, his voice calm and resonant. Olivia felt herself blush slightly. "Yeah, you could say that." "I was very impressed with how you handled yourself," he continued. "You showed remarkable grace under immense pressure. That's a rare quality." "I didn't really do anything," Olivia said honestly. "I just sat there." "Sometimes not reacting, not sinking to their level is the most powerful thing you can do," the man replied. "It preserves your dignity and exposes their foolishness for what it is. May I ask what brings you to New York?" The friendly question was a welcome distraction. "I have an audition," she said, a spark of her earlier excitement returning. "For the pre-college division at Juilliard. I'm a cellist." The man's eyes lit up with genuine interest. "Juilliard! That's magnificent. A true temple of the arts. It takes a tremendous amount of dedication to even get an audition there." "It's all I've ever wanted," Olivia admitted. "I'm applying for a scholarship, too. It's the only way my family can afford it if I get in. It's called the Reynolds Foundation Performing Arts Grant." At the mention of the name, the man's warm smile deepened. A strange, knowing look entered his eyes. He set his book down on the small table next to him and extended a hand across the aisle. "It is a pleasure to meet you properly, Olivia," he said. "My name is Dr. Michael Lawrence." Olivia shook his hand, still processing his earlier compliments. "You're a musician as well?" she asked, noting how he had reacted to her mention of Juilliard. Dr. Lawrence's eyes crinkled with amusement. "Not by any stretch of the imagination, though I am a devoted listener. My connection to music is more administrative." He paused, seeming to consider how much to reveal. "I've actually followed your development from afar. One of our regional talent scouts flagged your performance at the Atlanta Young Artists Showcase last year." Olivia's eyes widened. You knew who I was before today?" "I knew your name and had heard recordings of your playing, yes," Dr. Lawrence explained. "My grandfather started the Reynolds Foundation many years ago. I have the privilege of running it now. I'm heading to New York for a board meeting and, as it happens, to sit in on the final round of scholarship auditions this weekend." Olivia's mind went blank, the name echoing in her ears, colliding with the words she had just spoken. She had been under the radar of the Reynolds Foundation even before this flight. "So, this meeting isn't just coincidence?" she asked, trying to process this revelation. "The fact that we're on the same flight certainly is," Dr. Lawrence clarified. "The Reynolds Foundation tracks promising young talents across the country. Your name has been in our database since your teacher, Mr. Collins, submitted recordings of your playing to our regional scout. But I had no idea you would be on this particular flight to New York, nor that I would witness such an unfortunate display of prejudice." This explanation made the coincidence feel less contrived, more organic. It was still remarkable, but now there was a logical connection that made their meeting more believable. "Dr. Lawrence," she said, the name feeling momentous on her tongue. I don't know what to say." "Say nothing," he said, raising a hand. "Your audition will say everything it needs to. But I will tell you this, young lady, my grandfather believed that art was the soul of a community, and that the soul of an artist was just as important as their talent. He looked for character, and from what I've seen today, you have it in spades." He picked his book back up, giving her a small, respectful nod, and returned to his reading, leaving Olivia in a state of stunned, buzzing silence. The flight had started as a trial by fire, a test of her endurance. It had then become a surprising reward, but now it had transformed into something else entirely, a moment of profound connection. The karma of the situation was no longer just about the Fosters getting their comeuppance. It was about her being seen, truly seen, in a moment of vulnerability by someone who recognized both her talent and her character. While Olivia Jackson was navigating the surreal dreamscape of first class, discovering the connection to Dr. Lawrence, the world she had left on the ground was igniting. The consequences of the Fosters' actions were no longer confined to the recycled air of an aluminum tube. They had escaped into the digital ether and were multiplying at an exponential rate, breeding a form of karma so swift and so total that no amount of wealth or privilege could offer shelter. Back in the sterile, indifferent expanse of the Hartsfield-Jackson terminal, Douglas and Elizabeth Foster were putting on a masterclass in belligerent entitlement. They weren't just angry, they were performing anger, convinced that a sufficient display of outrage would eventually bend reality to their will. Douglas had commandeered the customer service desk, his voice echoing through the concourse as he berated a series of airline employees. "I don't think you understand," he bellowed into his iPhone, stabbing a finger at the plexiglass divider for emphasis. "My name is Douglas Foster, Foster. My firm spends over $1 million a year on corporate travel with your pathetic airline. I want the names of every crew member on that flight, especially that sanctimonious purser Carmen Diaz. There will be dismissals. There will be lawsuits. I will personally see to it that she is supervising a lavatory cleaning crew in Anchorage by next week." Elizabeth, meanwhile, played the tragic victim. She dabbed at her dry eyes with a silk handkerchief, sighing heavily and speaking to the growing line of annoyed passengers behind them. "It's just so frightening," she whispered, her voice laced with a tremor that was pure theater. "To be targeted like that. We were afraid for our safety. The crew did nothing. They sided with her, of course." Her performance, however, was failing to land. A young man in the queue, scrolling on his phone, looked up and said flatly, "Lady, I just saw a video of what happened. You weren't in danger. You were the danger." Elizabeth stared at him, her mouth agape, utterly scandalized that a member of the public would dare contradict her narrative. The video he was watching had been uploaded less than an hour ago by Tyler Kim, the tech blogger from Seat 21C. As soon as the plane's doors closed, he had connected to the airport's Wi-Fi, his fingers flying across his phone screen. He hadn't just uploaded the clip. He had tagged the airline, several major news outlets, and a few prominent anti-racism activists. The caption was a masterpiece of concise fury. On Flight 782, ATL LGA Douglas and Elizabeth Foster demanded a 16-year-old black girl be moved simply for existing. When the crew refused and upgraded the teen instead, this happened. This is what entitlement and racism look like. Make them famous. Famous was an understatement. The video didn't just go viral. It became a digital wildfire. Within 10 minutes, it had crossed the 100,000 view threshold. Comments flooded in a torrent of digital outrage. "The look on his face when he sees her get upgraded is my new screensaver. Flight attendant Carmen Diaz for president. His wife trying to play the victim. Girl, we have the receipts in 4K. By the time Flight 782 was serving drinks over the Carolinas, the video was a geopolitical event in miniature. News outlets were scrambling to verify the details. The online sleuths of Twitter and Reddit had already identified the couple with terrifying efficiency. Their LinkedIn profiles were screenshotted and circulated. The website for Foster Financial was discovered its Our Values page filled with corporate jargon about diversity and inclusion, becoming the subject of vicious international mockery. Foster Financial was Douglas's kingdom, a mid-tier private equity firm he had built through ruthless acquisitions and aggressive, often predatory tactics. Its entire existence was predicated on a carefully maintained image of stability and prestige. That image was now being torched in real time. The company's Google reviews rating collapsed from a respectable 4.5 to a 1.2 in under an hour. Their social media accounts were bombarded with thousands of angry comments, forcing the hapless social media manager to disable comments entirely. The hashtag #HadFosterFinancialFail was trending nationally. In the Foster Financial headquarters, a young marketing assistant burst into the executive meeting room, her face pale. "Mr. Daniels," she addressed the COO, "we have a situation. Mr. Foster is trending on social media and it's bad." The room full of executives froze laptops, opening in unison as they scrambled to see for themselves. "Jesus Christ," whispered the chief marketing officer, scrolling through Twitter. "He did this on camera. What was he thinking?" "He wasn't thinking," the general counsel replied grimly. "And now we're all going to pay for it." Douglas Foster remained blissfully unaware of this digital inferno. His entire world had narrowed to a single all-consuming objective: getting to New York. The meeting scheduled for the next morning with Innovate Global was the deal of a lifetime. For 2 years he had courted their CEO, the reclusive and enigmatic Dr. Michael Lawrence, to acquire Foster Financial. The deal, valued at just under $1 billion, was his magnum opus, the transaction that would cement his legacy and launch him into the stratosphere of the financial elite. This was not a meeting he could miss. Aboard that very flight, Dr. Lawrence was enjoying a chapter of a dense history of the Ottoman Empire when his satellite Wi-Fi connection chimed with an incoming message. It was from his chief communications officer with the subject line, "Urgent. You need to see this." Annoyed at the interruption, he opened the link. His screen filled with the shaky phone footage from inside the cabin he was currently sitting in. He watched the scene he had witnessed in person, now amplified by the phone's microphone. The sneering contempt in Douglas's voice, Elizabeth's fabricated claims, the quiet dignity of the young cellist, and the steely professionalism of the flight crew. He saw Douglas Foster's face contorted with rage, and a cold knot formed in his stomach. The face was familiar. With a growing sense of dread, he opened a new tab and typed Douglas Foster into the search bar. The first result was a news article posted just 20 minutes ago titled, "CEO Douglas Foster filmed in racist rant on flight." He clicked on it, and there it was. Douglas Foster, CEO of Foster Financial, the man whose company he was set to acquire in less than 24 hours. Dr. Lawrence leaned back in his plush leather seat. The hum of the engines a distant drone. Innovate Global was his life's work. He hadn't just built a tech giant. He had cultivated a corporate culture that was the envy of the industry. Their aggressive multi-billion-dollar diversity and inclusion programs weren't just for PR. They were the foundational pillars of his entire business philosophy. He believed that decency was a market advantage, that empathy was a key performance indicator. And he was about to merge his company with a man who would publicly humiliate a child over the color of her skin. A man who possessed such a profound lack of judgment and emotional control that he would self-destruct over a seating assignment. This wasn't just a moral failing, it was a catastrophic business liability. What other ticking time bombs lay hidden within Foster's character? His decision was not agonizing. It was instant and absolute. He opened his laptop, the movements precise and deliberate. He composed a short, unambiguous email to his entire executive board, his chief legal counsel, and the heads of mergers and acquisitions. Subject: immediate and final termination of Foster Financial acquisition. Body: all I am writing to you from Flight 782. The scene of an incident involving Douglas Foster that you have likely now seen circulating online. I was a first-hand witness to the event. Mr. Foster's public conduct represents a grotesque and irreconcilable violation of every ethical principle upon which Innovate Global is built. His behavior demonstrates a stunning lack of judgment, character, and basic human decency that makes him, and by extension his firm, an utterly unacceptable partner for our organization. Effective immediately, our offer to acquire Foster Financial is permanently rescinded. The deal is terminated. I am directing our legal team to formally notify their counsel at once. We will also issue a public statement within the hour, making our position unequivocally clear. We will not be associated with this kind of bigotry. If there are financial penalties for this late-stage withdrawal, we will gladly pay them. The cost of preserving our integrity is priceless. The deal is dead. There will be no further discussion. Regards, Michael Lawrence, founder and CEO, Innovate Global. He hit send. The quiet click of the trackpad was the sound of a billion-dollar deal being executed. He then closed the laptop, took a slow sip of water, and returned to his book, his expression serene. The cancer had been excised. Down on the ground, Douglas Foster had finally succeeded. He had secured 2 last-minute full-fare tickets on a competing airline departing in 90 minutes. Smug and vindicated, he settled into a seat in the airport lounge, already composing a triumphant text to his board about overcoming the airline's incompetence. Just as he was about to press send, his phone vibrated with an incoming email. The sender was the chief legal officer of Innovate Global. The subject line was a single brutal phrase, "Notice of termination." He opened it. His face, which had been flushed with arrogant victory, drained of all color, leaving a sickly gray pallor. His eyes scanned the cold, legalistic text, but the words, "irreconcilable conflict of values, public incident on Flight 782, and permanently rescinded," burned into his brain. The world tilted. The air in his lungs turned to ice. $1 billion, his legacy, his entire future, gone. Vanished in the time it took to send an email from 35,000 feet. "Douglas," Elizabeth's voice seemed to come from a great distance. "What is it? You look like you've seen a ghost." He couldn't speak. He simply handed her the phone, watching as her expression transformed from confusion to horror. This can't be real," she whispered. "They can't just pull out because of a silly seating dispute." "They can." He finally managed his voice hollow. "And they did." A moment later, his phone began to ring. It was the Wall Street Journal. Then it rang again. Bloomberg. His world wasn't just collapsing, it was being broadcast live, and he was standing alone in the wreckage. The descent into New York was a slow, glittering spectacle. As Flight 782 banked over the East River, the sprawling metropolis emerged from the haze, a forest of light and ambition. For Olivia, gazing out of the oversized first-class window, the sight was no longer just intimidating. It was an invitation. Every pinpoint of light looked like a possibility. The city, which had always felt like a distant, impossible dream, now seemed to be reaching up to meet her. The chaotic, humiliating ordeal she had endured had not broken her spirit. It had forged it into something stronger, like a cello string pulled to the perfect resonant tension. "First time seeing New York from the air?" asked a flight attendant as she collected Olivia's empty glass. "That obvious," Olivia replied with a small laugh. "It's the way you're looking out there, like you're seeing magic," the attendant said with a smile. "Never lose that. Too many people forget to see the wonder in things." The small moment of connection brought Olivia back to herself. She was here flying into New York City about to audition for Juilliard. The incident with the Fosters was already receding, becoming just one chapter in what promised to be a much larger story. As the plane taxied to the gate at LaGuardia, the cabin stirred with the familiar rituals of arrival. Dr. Lawrence rose from his seat, not with the hurried impatience of most travelers, but with a deliberate calm. He paused by Olivia's pod, waiting until she had gathered her backpack. "Olivia," he said, his voice a warm counterpoint to the cabin's mechanical sounds. "I want to leave you with a thought, if I may." She looked up at him, giving him her full attention. Talent, he began, is a gift. It is beautiful and it is powerful, but it is in many ways an accident of birth. It is what you are given. Character, on the other hand, is a choice. It is what you build day by day, decision by decision, especially when no one is watching, or when everyone is. He paused, his eyes serious but kind. Today, you were put in an impossible situation. You could have responded with anger, with tears, with fear, and all would have been justified. Instead, you chose grace. You chose dignity. In the world of art, and in the world at large, that is what separates the merely good from the truly great. He reached into his jacket pocket and produced a simple heavyweight business card. "This is not just for the audition," he said, placing it in her hand. "That is a given. This is an open line. If you ever need advice, a mentor, or just someone to champion your work, my door is always open. The world needs more artists like you, Olivia. Artists with a strong back and a good heart." Olivia stared at the card. The name Dr. Michael Lawrence was embossed in clean black letters. It felt heavier than paper. It felt like a key. "Thank you, Dr. Lawrence." She managed her voice thick with emotion. "I won't forget this. Any of it." He simply smiled a genuine expression of respect, and then he was gone, disappearing into the stream of deplaning passengers. Olivia took a deep breath and followed. Before leaving, she stopped to thank Carmen and Kevin, who were standing at the aircraft door. "Thank you both for everything," she said sincerely. Carmen smiled warmly. "It was our pleasure, honey. Good luck at your audition. We'll be rooting for you." Kevin nodded in agreement, adding, "Let me get your cello for you." He retrieved the instrument from the closet, handling it with the same care as before. "Break a leg at Juilliard," he said with a grin as he handed it over. "My brother's a drummer, so I know how nerve-wracking auditions can be," Carmen added, revealing another personal detail that helped humanize her. "Just remember to breathe, and remember how you handled yourself today. With that kind of composure, you'll do great." The moment Olivia stepped onto the jet bridge and switched her phone off airplane mode, her world exploded. The device began to vibrate in her hand with a relentless, frantic energy as if it were having a seizure. The screen lit up with a cascading wall of notifications, a digital tidal wave. A string of 15 missed calls and 30 texts from her mother, each more frantic than the last. "Olivia Elizabeth Jackson, call me this instant. I saw a video. Are you safe? CNN is showing footage. Call me right now." A flood of messages from her high school friends. "Dude, you're on CNN's homepage. OMG, Olivia Nehm the Cellist is trending #1 worldwide. You're a hero." There were Instagram follower requests by the thousands, and a notification that her old, forgotten Twitter account had been mentioned over 50,000 times. She saw her own face in a thumbnail for a news report titled, "Teen Upgraded to First Class After Racist Tirade. CEO on Same Flight Takes Action." It was surreal, overwhelming, and deeply unsettling. She was no longer just Olivia, the quiet girl with the cello. She was a hashtag, a headline, a symbol. In that moment, she felt a profound sense of dislocation, as if the person everyone was talking about was someone else entirely. She called her mother immediately, stepping aside in the terminal to find a quiet corner. "Mom," she said when Evelyn Jackson answered on the first ring. "Olivia, oh my God, baby, are you okay?" Her mother's voice was thick with worry. "I've been watching this video of you on the plane with these horrible people and I couldn't reach you and—" "Mom, I'm fine, I promise." Olivia interrupted, trying to sound calmer than she felt. "I'm at LaGuardia now. Everything's okay." "Those people—" Evelyn continued, her voice hardening with maternal fury. "The things they said to you, the way they looked at you. I just want to—" "It's okay, Mom," Olivia said, surprised at the steadiness in her voice. "They got what they deserved. They got kicked off the plane and I got moved to first class." "First class?" her mother repeated, momentarily distracted from her anger. "Yeah, it was amazing. And Mom, you won't believe this, I met Dr. Michael Lawrence, the director of the Reynolds Foundation. He was on my flight sitting right across from me in first class. He saw the whole thing." "The scholarship," Evelyn gasped. "Olivia, are you serious?" "Dead serious. He gave me his card. He said my character impressed him." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line, then a soft, tearful laugh. "Only you, Olivia. Only you could turn something so awful into something so miraculous." Olivia felt tears welling up in her eyes for the first time since the incident. "I was so scared, Mom," she admitted, her voice finally cracking. "They made me feel so small." "But you weren't small," her mother said fiercely. "You were bigger than all of them. You still are." After promising to call again when she reached the hotel, Olivia ended the call and made her way through the terminal. She was acutely aware of the stares following her. Some people were pointing, whispering to each other. A few even took photos. It was as if she had stepped out of the plane and into an alternate reality where she was suddenly famous. A text from Dr. Lawrence appeared on her phone. "Olivia, I've arranged for a car service to take you to your hotel. The driver will be waiting at arrivals with your name on a sign. Focus on your audition. The rest is noise. ML." She marveled at the gesture, another act of unexpected kindness in a day full of extremes. The black sedan was waiting as promised, the driver holding a sign with Jackson written in elegant script. As she settled into the comfortable leather backseat cello secured beside her, she finally allowed herself to process the events of the day. She had left Atlanta as a nervous, unknown teenager with a dream. In the span of a few hours, she had been humiliated, defended, elevated, befriended, and thrust into an unexpected spotlight. The city lights of New York blurred past the window as the car moved through traffic, mirroring the whirlwind of her thoughts. Her phone continued to vibrate with notifications. News outlets were requesting interviews. Strangers were sending messages of support. Her social media follower counts were climbing by the minute. It was as if the universe had taken her private struggle and amplified it 1,000-fold, turning a personal indignity into a public statement. She thought of the Fosters, wondering where they were now, what they were feeling. Did they regret their actions, or were they simply angry at being caught? She thought of Carmen and Kevin standing up for what was right, even when it would have been easier to placate the wealthy, entitled passengers. She thought of Sofia Alvarez speaking out when she could have remained silent. And she thought of Dr. Lawrence, a man of principle, who had just sacrificed $1 billion deal rather than associate with bigotry. His words echoed in her mind. Character is a choice. By the time she reached her hotel, a modest 3-star establishment in Manhattan that had stretched her mother's budget, Olivia felt a strange sense of calm descend over her. The storm of notifications continued, but they seemed less important now. What mattered was tomorrow. What mattered was the audition. What mattered was proving that she deserved to be here not because of a viral video, but because of her talent and her dedication. In her small hotel room, she carefully unpacked her cello, inspecting it for any damage from the flight. Finding it perfect, she set up her music stand, positioned her chair, and began to play. The rich, resonant tones of Bach's Cello Suite No. 1 filled the room, pushing everything else away. There was no viral video, no Fosters, no social media storm. There was only the music flowing through her fingers as it always had, unchanged by the day's chaos. This was her center, her truth. Whatever happened tomorrow, whatever came of her newfound notoriety, this would remain constant. The cello didn't care about viral videos or Twitter trends. It responded purely to skill, to emotion, to dedication. A particularly challenging passage in the third movement had always given her trouble, her left hand cramping as she tried to maintain the awkward stretch across the fingerboard while keeping the tone pure. Tonight, however, she approached it differently. Instead of forcing her hand into the position, she relaxed into it, letting the music guide her fingers rather than her will imposing itself on the instrument. To her surprise, the passage flowed effortlessly, the notes ringing clear and true. It was as if the day's events had unlocked something in her playing, a new freedom, a deeper connection to the music itself. "Huh," she murmured to herself with a small smile. "Sometimes you have to let go to move forward." The simple realization felt profound, applicable to more than just her cello technique. Perhaps this was true of life as well. Sometimes you had to release your grip on expectations, on fear, on the need for control in order to find your true voice. The final notes of the prelude hung in the air of the small hotel room, resonant and true. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but for now, in this moment, she was exactly where she needed to be. The morning of the audition dawned clear and crisp, a perfect New York autumn day. Olivia woke early, her body still on Atlanta time. She lay in the unfamiliar hotel bed, staring at the ceiling, allowing herself one moment of quiet before the day's pressure descended. Her phone, which she had silenced overnight, showed hundreds of missed notifications. She ignored them, sending only a quick text to her mother to let her know she was awake and feeling ready. She followed her pre-performance ritual meticulously, a routine developed over years of recitals and competitions. A light breakfast, gentle stretches to loosen her shoulders and wrists, 15 minutes of scales to warm up her fingers, then a slow, deliberate run-through of the most challenging passages from her audition piece. As she worked through a particularly intricate section of the Bach suite, her fingers stumbled. She stopped, took a deep breath, and tried again. Same result. Frustration bubbled up. This passage had never given her trouble before. "Come on, Olivia," she muttered to herself. "Focus." She tried a third time, slower, now paying attention to the tension in her hand. There it was. She was gripping the neck too tightly, her anxiety manifesting physically in her playing. She consciously relaxed her hand, letting her fingers hover just above the strings before placing them with gentle precision. This time, the passage flowed smoothly. It was a small victory, but an important reminder of how emotions could affect her playing for better or worse. She needed to channel yesterday's experience constructively, using it to fuel her performance without letting it constrict her technique. As she packed her cello, her phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize with a New York area code. She hesitated, then answered. "Hello? Olivia Jackson?" a crisp professional voice asked. "Yes, this is she." "This is Jenna Williams, Dr. Lawrence's assistant. He asked me to check if you need transportation to your audition today." Olivia was taken aback by the continued thoughtfulness. "Oh, that's very kind, but I'm okay. My hotel isn't far from Juilliard. I was planning to walk." There was a pause on the other end. "With your cello in Manhattan." Olivia hadn't considered how awkward that might be. I guess so. Dr. Lawrence anticipated you might say that. There's a car waiting for you downstairs whenever you're ready. The driver will take you to Juilliard and wait to bring you back after your audition. Dr. Lawrence insists. He says to consider it part of the Reynolds Foundation's commitment to supporting young artists. "That's incredibly generous," Olivia said, overcome by the gesture. "Please thank him for me." "I will. And Olivia, good luck today. Though from what Dr. Lawrence tells me, you won't need it." The call ended, leaving Olivia standing in the middle of her hotel room, cello case in one hand, phone in the other, marveling at how her world had shifted so dramatically in less than 24 hours. The car was waiting as promised, the same black sedan from the airport. The driver, an older man with kind eyes, helped her load her cello into the trunk with surprising care. "You must be a musician," he said, noting her surprise. "How did you know?" He smiled. "My daughter plays violin. I know how precious these instruments are." The drive to Juilliard was short, but gave Olivia her first real glimpse of New York in daylight. The city pulsed with an energy that matched her own nervous anticipation, fast-moving, determined, unstoppable. As they approached the iconic Juilliard building, Olivia felt a tightening in her chest. This was it. The moment she had been working toward for years. The driver pulled up to the entrance, came around to open her door, and retrieved her cello with the same gentle handling. "I'll be right here when you finish," he assured her. "Take your time. Make music." Olivia nodded. Her thanks, took a deep breath, and walked into the building that had existed in her dreams for as long as she could remember. The lobby was bustling with students and faculty, each absorbed in their own musical journeys. No one gave her a second glance here. She was just another young musician with an instrument case. After the strangeness of her sudden notoriety, the anonymity was comforting. She followed the signs to the audition check-in, where a brisk woman with glasses handed her a number and directed her to a practice room to warm up. The room was small but well appointed with perfect acoustics. Olivia unpacked her cello, adjusted the end pin to the correct height, and began her final preparations. The bow felt different in her hand today, lighter, somehow more responsive. She drew it across the open strings, feeling the resonance build from her fingertips up her arm and into her core. The sound was rich and warm, filling the small space with vibration. She began with scales, her fingers dancing up and down the fingerboard in familiar patterns. C major, 3 octaves each note perfectly in tune. G minor, harmonic, then melodic, the shifts between positions flowing like water. She moved on to arpeggios, the broken chords building tension, then releasing it in waves of sound. As she played, she tried to focus solely on the music, but her mind kept drifting to the events of the previous day. The humiliation of the Foster's prejudice, the kindness of Carmen and the flight crew, the surreal coincidence of meeting Dr. Lawrence. It all seemed like a strange dream now disconnected from this moment of musical concentration. Yet somehow the emotions from yesterday were finding their way into her playing. The anger at being dismissed became a fierce attack on certain phrases. The dignity she'd maintained transformed into a noble, sustained tone in the slower sections. The resolution she'd felt in first class emerged as a confident clarity in the final movements. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Number 47, you're on deck," a student assistant called through the door. "Please come to the green room." Olivia carefully packed up her cello and made her way to the green room where 3 other nervous young musicians were waiting. None of them spoke, each lost in their own mental preparations. Olivia took a seat, closed her eyes, and silently ran through the piece one more time in her head, her fingers moving slightly as if playing an invisible instrument. "Number 47, Olivia Jackson," another assistant called from the doorway. Olivia gathered her cello and sheet music and followed the assistant down a hallway to the audition room. The assistant gave her an encouraging smile before opening the door. The audition hall was larger than Olivia had expected, with perfect acoustics and seating for at least 100 people. Most of the seats were empty, save for a row in the center where 5 people sat with clipboards, the judges, and there in the middle of the panel was Dr. Michael Lawrence. He gave no sign of recognition, his face impassive and professional. This was not the kind man from the airplane. This was the director of the Reynolds Foundation, evaluating her purely on musical merit. "You may begin when ready, Ms. Jackson," said the woman at the center of the panel, her voice echoing slightly in the large space. Olivia positioned her chair, adjusted her cello, and took a moment to center herself. Then she began to play. The opening notes of Bach's Cello Suite Num. 1 emerged with a richness and depth that surprised even her. Her left hand moved with newfound freedom, the fingertips pressing into the strings with just the right amount of pressure, firm enough for clear articulation but relaxed enough to allow the notes to sing. Her bow arm felt completely connected to the music, drawing out the phrases with a natural breathing quality. The notes weren't just correct. They were alive, speaking with a voice that was uniquely hers. As she moved into the allemande, her bow control became more intricate, alternating between feather-light touches for the delicate ornaments and deep sonorous pressure for the foundational bass notes. Each string crossing was seamless, the transitions between registers flowing like a single unbroken thought. In the courant, her fingers flew across the fingerboard, navigating the rapid 16th notes with precision and clarity. Her left thumb remained relaxed against the neck, allowing her hand to shift positions with balletic grace. The challenging passage that had given her trouble that morning now unfolded effortlessly, each note distinct yet part of a coherent musical line. She wasn't just executing a piece of music. She was telling the story of the last 24 hours, translating her trial and her vindication into a language everyone could understand. The saraband became a meditation on dignity in the face of prejudice, each note weighted with emotion, but never self-indulgent. The minuets danced with a quiet confidence, the counterpoint clear and purposeful. As she approached the final jig, Olivia felt a surge of joy rush through her. This wasn't just Bach anymore. This was her voice speaking its truth without apology or hesitation. Her bow bounced across the strings with infectious energy, her fingers finding their targets with unerring accuracy. The final chords resonated through the hall, powerful and resolute. When the final note faded into the vast silence of the hall, she knew she had left nothing behind. She had played her truth. The panel was silent for a long moment. Then the woman in the center nodded. "Thank you, Miss Jackson. That was extraordinary." Dr. Lawrence's face remained neutral, but Olivia thought she saw a flicker of something, pride, satisfaction, in his eyes, before she bowed slightly and left the stage. In the hallway, the assistant who had escorted her in was waiting with a bottle of water. "That was amazing," she whispered. "I was listening at the door. I've never heard the Bach played like that." Olivia thanked her, still riding the wave of performance adrenaline. She collected her belongings from the practice room and headed back to the lobby. As promised, the car was waiting outside. The driver jumped out to help her with her cello. "How did it go?" he asked as he carefully loaded the instrument. "Good, I think," Olivia replied. "I played my best." "Then that's all that matters," he said with a smile. As they pulled away from the curb, Olivia's phone buzzed with a text. It was from Dr. Lawrence. "That was not good. That was exceptional. Regardless of the outcome, know that you have a rare gift." The panel was deeply moved. "Rest now. We'll be in touch soon." Olivia read the message 3 times, hardly believing it was real. She had done it. Whatever happened next, she had stood on the Juilliard stage and played her heart out. No one could take that away from her. Back at the hotel, she finally allowed herself to look at her phone properly. The social media storm had not abated. If anything, it had intensified. Tyler Kim's video had now been viewed over 5 million times. News outlets around the country were running the story. Her name and image were everywhere. Among the flood of notifications was an email from Carmen Diaz. "Olivia, just checking in to see that you're okay after yesterday's incident. The airline wants you to know that we've implemented a formal review of our anti-discrimination policies as a result of what happened. Your dignity in the face of such ugliness was inspiring to all of us. If you're ever in Atlanta again, please let me know. I'd love to hear you play sometime. Wishing you all the best with your audition. Carmen Diaz, Purser." The unexpected message brought fresh tears to Olivia's eyes. The connection to that pivotal moment on the plane, a moment that had started with humiliation but ended with unexpected doors opening, felt like the closing of a circle. She called her mother to report on the audition, carefully describing the hall, the panel, and her performance. "I'm so proud of you," Evelyn said, her voice thick with emotion. "No matter what happens with the results, I'm just so proud." "I know, Mom," Olivia said, smiling. "And I'm grateful for everything." After hanging up, she ordered room service, a small splurge to celebrate her successful audition, and settled in with her cello to practice. Tomorrow she would return to Atlanta, back to her regular life of school and practice and ordinary teenage concerns. But she knew that something fundamental had shifted. She had been tested in ways she never expected and had discovered a strength she hadn't known she possessed. As she played softly in her hotel room, letting the familiar notes wash over her, Olivia reflected on Dr. Lawrence's words from the airplane. Talent is a gift. Character is a choice. Today, she had demonstrated both. And whatever the future held, acceptance to Juilliard, the Reynolds Scholarship, or a completely different path, she would carry that knowledge with her, a foundation more solid than any accolade or recognition. The cello resonated beneath her fingers, the sound filling the small hotel room with warmth and promise. For now, in this moment, it was enough. While Olivia was finding her center in music, Douglas and Elizabeth Foster were watching their carefully constructed world crumble around them in real time. The digital wildfire that had begun with Tyler Kim's video was now a full-blown inferno consuming everything in its path. Their reputation, their business, their social standing all reduced to ashes in less than 24 hours. They had made it back to their Westchester mansion late the previous night, having caught the last flight out of Atlanta. The ride from the airport had been silent, each lost in their own thoughts. Douglas frantically trying to salvage the Innovate Global deal via frantic phone calls that went straight to voicemail. Elizabeth scrolling through her social media accounts with growing horror as friends and acquaintances publicly distanced themselves from her. They had gone to bed without speaking, the vast king-size mattress, feeling like an ocean between them. Morning brought no relief. Douglas woke to find 3 news vans parked at the end of their long driveway, reporters standing with microphones waiting for a statement. His phone had over 100 missed calls. Board members, investors, business partners, all demanding explanations. The email from Innovate Global's legal team had been followed by a public statement that was being quoted in every financial publication. Innovate Global has terminated all acquisition discussions with Foster Financial effective immediately. This decision follows disturbing behavior displayed by Foster Financial CEO Douglas Foster that fundamentally conflicts with our core values of respect, diversity, and human dignity. We cannot and will not align ourselves with leadership that demonstrates such a profound lack of judgment and character. The statement had been picked up by the Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, CNBC, and every other major financial news outlet. Foster Financial's stock, which had been climbing in anticipation of the acquisition, was in freefall. Trading had been halted twice already to prevent a complete collapse. Douglas sat at his kitchen island, staring at his laptop screen in disbelief as years of work, billions in value, disappeared before his eyes. His executive team had called an emergency board meeting, one to which he had not been invited. His calls to board members went unanswered. His own company was moving against him, trying to contain the damage by cutting him loose. Elizabeth entered the kitchen, her face pale and drawn despite a careful application of makeup. She looked older than she had the day before, the lines of privilege and entitlement now etched deeper by fear. "The Andersons have uninvited us from their benefit gala," she said, her voice flat. "And the country club has called to discuss our membership status. They've never done that before." Douglas didn't respond, his eyes fixed on his screen where an email from the board chairman had just appeared. "Emergency board meeting scheduled for 2 p.m. today to discuss leadership transition. Your presence is not required. Legal counsel will be in touch regarding separation terms." Separation terms. They were forcing him out of his own company, the company he had built from nothing through 20 years of relentless work and ruthless determination, all because of one moment, one incident, one girl who should have just moved to another seat. "This is insane," he muttered, his hands shaking with rage. "All of this over a seating arrangement. It's out of proportion. It's unjust. It's what happens when you show the world who you really are. came a voice from the doorway. They both turned to see their daughter Megan, a junior at Columbia University, standing there with a backpack slung over her shoulder. Her expression was a mix of disappointment and resolve. "Megan?" Elizabeth said, her voice brightening with false cheerfulness. "We didn't know you were coming home this weekend." "I wasn't planning to," Megan replied coldly. "But when your parents become the poster children for entitled racism overnight, you feel a certain obligation to address it face to face." "That's not fair," Douglas protested, his voice rising. "You don't understand what happened. The media is blowing this out of proportion. That girl has a name," Megan interrupted. "Olivia Jackson. She's 16. She plays the cello. She was going to a Juilliard audition, and you treated her like she was subhuman because of the color of her skin." "How do you know all that?" Elizabeth asked, her eyes narrowing. "Because unlike you two, I actually looked her up instead of just making assumptions. I also watched the full video, not just the edited clips on the news. I heard what you said, Mom. I saw how you looked at her dad. It was disgusting." Douglas felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. His own daughter was judging him, condemning him. "Megan, you don't understand the pressure we're under. The deal with Innovate Global is dead," Megan finished for him. "And it should be. Dr. Lawrence made the right call." "You know Michael Lawrence?" Elizabeth asked, surprised. "I interned at the Reynolds Foundation last summer," Megan replied. "Dr. Lawrence is a man of principle. He would never do business with someone like you." The "you" hung in the air, a clear delineation. Megan was separating herself from them, drawing a line between their values and hers. "I came to get some things from my room," she continued. "I'll be staying with friends for the foreseeable future. I can't be associated with this." "Associated with your own parents?" Elizabeth's voice rose indignant. "We're your family, Megan. And I'm ashamed of you," Megan replied, her voice breaking slightly. "Both of you. I always knew there were undercurrents of prejudice in this house. The comments about those people and bad neighborhoods. The way you talked about my friends who weren't white. But I told myself you were just from a different generation, that you didn't mean it that way. Now the whole world sees what I didn't want to admit." She turned to leave, then paused, looking back over her shoulder. "You know what the worst part is? You're not even sorry. You're just sorry you got caught." With that, she disappeared upstairs, leaving her parents standing in stunned silence. Douglas's phone rang again, the fourth call from his PR firm in the last hour. This time he answered. "What?" he barked. "Mr. Foster, we've drafted a statement, but we need to move quickly. The narrative is solidifying, and we're losing control of the—" "Losing control?" Douglas interrupted with a bitter laugh. "That ship has sailed, Richard. My company is tanking, my board is ousting me, my own daughter is ashamed of me, and there are news vans at my gate. I'd say control is a distant memory at this point." "All the more reason to get your side of the story out there," the PR consultant insisted. "We need to humanize you, show contrition, perhaps arrange a meeting with the Jackson girl for a public apology." "Absolutely not," Elizabeth cut in, having moved close enough to hear the call. "We will not be paraded in front of cameras to apologize for something that was blown completely out of proportion." "Mrs. Foster, with all due respect, the video speaks for itself. There's no ambiguity here. Our only play is contrition and a commitment to learning and growing from this incident." "Learning and growing," Elizabeth repeated incredulously. "We're not children in sensitivity training. We're adults who had a preference about seating on an airplane. This response is completely—" "Elizabeth, stop," Douglas said suddenly, his voice weary. For the first time, the full weight of what was happening seemed to hit him. "Just stop." He turned his attention back to the phone. "Richard, I'll call you back." He ended the call and sat heavily on one of the kitchen bar stools, suddenly looking older and smaller than he had just minutes before. "What are you doing?" Elizabeth demanded. "We need to fight this. We need to get our side of the story out there. People are making judgments without all the facts." "What facts, Elizabeth?" Douglas asked quietly. The facts are on video for the world to see. We demanded that a teenager be moved because of her race. We lied about feeling threatened. We tried to use our status to bully airline staff. We behaved exactly like the entitled, privileged people everyone thinks we are. Elizabeth stared at him in shock. So you're just giving up letting them cancel us for one mistake? It wasn't just one mistake, came Megan's voice again as she returned to the kitchen, a duffel bag now slung over her shoulder. It was a revealing moment, and now you have a choice. Dig in and become even more entrenched in your prejudice, or recognize that you've been exposed and try to become better people. She headed for the front door without waiting for a response. The sound of it closing behind her echoed through the house like a final judgment. Douglas turned back to his laptop where notifications continued to pour in. A new headline caught his eye. Foster Financial Board names interim CEO as Douglas Foster faces mounting pressure to resign. They hadn't even waited for the emergency meeting. They had already replaced him. 20 years of building an empire gone in less than a day. His phone buzzed with a text from his oldest friend, Thomas Whitman. Douglas, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to ask you and Elizabeth to withdraw from the club committee. The board feels it would be best for everyone. Another buzz, another text. This one from the headmaster of the prestigious private school where Elizabeth served as a trustee. In light of recent events, we believe it would be appropriate for you to take a leave of absence from the board. The digital wildfire was consuming everything, burning away the careful facade they had constructed over decades. Their friends were abandoning them. Their social circles were closing ranks against them. Their daughter was ashamed of them. Their reputation was in tatters, and all because they couldn't bear to sit next to a black teenager on an airplane. Elizabeth's phone chimed with a calendar notification. Greenwich Symphony fundraiser, co-chair meeting 3 p.m. She stared at it for a long moment, then looked up at Douglas. They won't want me there, she said quietly, the reality finally beginning to sink in. No one will want us anywhere now. I was just going to demand they move her. Elizabeth continued, her voice hollow. I never meant. Yes, you did, Douglas said quietly. We both did. We looked at her and saw someone we could push around, someone who didn't belong in our space. We've always done that, haven't we? Remember that waiter at the club last summer? The valet at the Hamiltons' party? That young associate in the office? Elizabeth didn't respond, but her silence was admission enough. We did this, Douglas continued. We did this to ourselves. For the first time in their marriage, they looked at each other with clear eyes stripped of the protective layers of wealth and status that had insulated them from the consequences of their actions for so long. What they saw was uncomfortable, unflattering, but undeniably true. What do we do now? Elizabeth asked, sounding genuinely lost. Douglas didn't have an answer. Outside, the number of news vans had doubled. His phone continued to buzz with calls he couldn't bring himself to answer. The digital wildfire raged on, uncontrolled and uncontrollable, consuming everything in its path. And at the center of the inferno stood Douglas and Elizabeth Foster, watching as the life they had built burned to the ground around them, forced to confront not just the public consequences of their actions, but the private reckoning with who they truly were. While Olivia Jackson slept in her modest hotel room in Manhattan, exhausted from her audition and the emotional roller coaster of the past 2 days, Dr. Michael Lawrence was still awake in his penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park. The city lights glimmered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, but his attention was focused on the screens arrayed before him. On one monitor, he was reviewing the day's auditions, making notes on each candidate's performance. On another, he was tracking the fallout from the Foster incident, which had now morphed from a viral video to a cautionary tale of how quickly a lifetime of privilege could unravel. On a third screen, he was examining the financial implications of withdrawing from the Foster financial acquisition. Significant, but not insurmountable. His chief communications officer, Jenna Williams, appeared in the doorway of his home office, tablet in hand. Despite the late hour, she was still impeccably dressed, her efficiency undiminished. "The statement has been picked up by all major outlets," she reported. "Financial Times, Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg. They're all running with the story. Our stock is actually up 3 points in after-hours trading, Dr." Lawrence nodded, unsurprised. The markets respected decisive ethical leadership more than most people realized. "And the legal implications?" "Minimal," Jenna replied. "Our termination clause was clear. Foster Financial can claim damages for the late-stage withdrawal, but given the circumstances and the public nature of the CEO's behavior, they'd be foolish to pursue it. Our legal team thinks they'll quietly accept the break fee and try to limit further publicity." "Good," Dr. Lawrence said, leaning back in his chair. "And the Reynolds Foundation Scholarship Committee, have they been briefed about Ms. Jackson?" "Yes, though I was careful to emphasize that her application should be judged solely on musical merit," Jenna assured him. "I did not share your personal observations from the flight." Dr. Lawrence smiled slightly. "A wise precaution, though ultimately unnecessary. Her performance today spoke for itself. I've reviewed all the auditions and she was exceptional, regardless of any extenuating circumstances." He gestured toward the screen where a video of Olivia's audition was paused. "Listen to this passage," he said, pressing play. The rich, resonant tones of the cello filled the room. Even through the recording, the emotional depth of the performance was unmistakable. Jenna listened, her expression softening. "That's remarkable," she said when he paused the playback. "Especially for someone her age." "Indeed," Dr. Lawrence agreed. "There's a maturity to her playing that goes beyond technical proficiency. She's not just reproducing notes, she's telling a story. That's rare even among accomplished musicians." He turned his attention to another screen where Tyler Kim's video was playing silently. The footage showed Douglas Foster's face contorted with anger, Elizabeth Foster's theatrical victimhood, and Olivia's quiet dignity throughout the ordeal. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "I've been in business for over 40 years. I've made billions of dollars, built a global company, established a foundation that supports hundreds of young artists every year. But I'm not sure I've ever felt as satisfied as I did sending that termination email yesterday." Jenna raised an eyebrow. "Because it was the right thing to do." "Because it was unequivocal," Dr. Lawrence clarified. "So many of our decisions in business and in life exist in shades of gray. We compromise, we rationalize, we weigh competing interests. But occasionally we're presented with a moment of perfect moral clarity. The Fosters gave me such a moment." He gestured toward the screen. "Look at them. They're not evil people in the traditional sense. They're products of a privileged existence that has insulated them from consequences their entire lives. They genuinely couldn't conceive of a world where their comfort, their preferences, their implicit biases wouldn't be accommodated." "And now," Jenna asked, "now they're experiencing what it feels like to be judged solely on their behavior without the buffer of wealth and status," Dr. Lawrence replied. "It's a reckoning that was long overdue." He turned back to the audition footage, studying Olivia's face as she played. The intense concentration, the emotional connection to the music, the quiet confidence that seemed to have blossomed since he'd first seen her on the plane. "You know, my grandfather used to say that character isn't built during moments of comfort. It's revealed during moments of challenge," he mused. "I saw 2 revelations of character yesterday: the Foster's entitlement and prejudice, and Ms. Jackson's dignity and resilience." "And which do you think will ultimately have the greater impact?" Jenna asked. Dr. Lawrence considered this for a moment. "In the short term, the Foster's behavior has created the bigger splash, a viral scandal, a business implosion, a public downfall. It's dramatic and immediate, the kind of story that captures headlines." He gestured toward Olivia's image on the screen. "But in the long term, I suspect Ms. Jackson's quiet dignity will yield the more lasting fruits. Talent combined with character is a powerful combination. She has both in abundance." Jenna nodded, making a note on her tablet. Speaking of lasting impact, the board is impressed with how you handled the Foster situation. There's talk of establishing a more formal ethics framework for future acquisitions, something beyond the standard due diligence. An excellent idea, Dr. Lawrence agreed. Financial vetting is necessary but insufficient. Character assessment should be equally rigorous. He closed the audition video and pulled up a document, the application for the Reynolds Foundation Scholarship. Olivia's personal statement filled the screen, a thoughtful essay about how music had shaped her understanding of herself and her place in the world, Dr. Lawrence agreed. Financial vetting is necessary but insufficient. Character assessment should be equally rigorous. He closed the audition video and pulled up a document, the application for the Reynolds Foundation Scholarship. Olivia's personal statement filled the screen, a thoughtful essay about how music had shaped her understanding of herself and her place in the world. Make sure the selection committee has everything they need, he instructed Jenna. And double-check that the car service is arranged for Ms. Jackson's return to the airport tomorrow. Already confirmed, Jenna assured him. Is there anything else? Dr. Lawrence hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. Yes, I'd like to establish a new program under the Reynolds Foundation umbrella, something focused specifically on young artists who have overcome significant obstacles, not just financial barriers, but social and cultural ones as well. Jenna's eyes widened slightly. Inspired by Ms. Jackson. Informed by her experience, yes, he admitted. But it's something I've been considering for some time. Yesterday's incident simply crystallized the need. Talent exists everywhere, but opportunity does not. I'd like to help bridge that gap. I'll put together a proposal, Jenna promised, making another note. Budget parameters. Initial funding of $10 million with the potential to scale based on impact assessment after the first year, Dr. Lawrence replied without hesitation. Jenna nodded, impressed but not surprised by his decisiveness. Consider it done. Will there be anything else tonight? No, thank you, Jenna. Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll be busy. After she left, Dr. Lawrence turned back to his screens, clicking through various news stories about the incident. The narrative had evolved over the past 24 hours, with multiple angles emerging: the racial component, the corporate fallout, the social media dynamics. But at the center of it all was still the simple human story. A young black woman subjected to prejudice and the unexpected consequences that followed. He thought about his own daughter Victoria, who was now in her 30s and running the technology division of Innovate Global. How would he have felt if someone had treated her the way the Fosters treated Olivia? The thought made his jaw clench involuntarily. Dad. A voice interrupted his thoughts, and he turned to see Victoria herself in the doorway, fresh off a late flight from London. She was still in her travel clothes, her carry-on suitcase beside her. Victoria, he said warmly, rising to embrace her. I thought you weren't back until next week. I caught an earlier flight when I heard about the Foster situation, she explained, hugging him tightly. I wanted to be here in case you needed moral support facing the board. Dr. Lawrence chuckled. The board is the least of my concerns. They're fully behind the decision. Of course they are, Victoria said, settling into a chair across from him. It was the right call, both ethically and business-wise. Though I admit I was surprised you were so decisive. Usually there's more deliberation even when you're convinced. Usually there are more shades of gray, he replied. This was black and white. Victoria studied her father's face. It's more than that. I can tell. What's really going on? Dr. Lawrence smiled slightly. His daughter had always been perceptive, able to read him better than anyone else. I was there, he admitted. On the plane, I witnessed the whole incident. Victoria's eyes widened. You saw it in person. That wasn't in any of the news reports. No, and I'd like to keep it that way, he said. The focus should be on the principles at stake, not my personal involvement. And the cellist? Victoria asked. The girl they were harassing? Olivia Jackson, Dr. Lawrence said, his voice softening. 16 years old, remarkable talent. She auditioned for Juilliard today, and for our scholarship program. She was extraordinary. Victoria studied her father's expression, a smile slowly spreading across her face. "You've found another protege, haven't you? Like that pianist from Detroit last year?" Dr. Lawrence shook his head but couldn't suppress a small smile. "I've found a young artist of exceptional promise, both musically and personally. The foundation exists to support such individuals." "Of course," Victoria said, not bothering to hide her amusement at her father's attempts at professional detachment. "Well, I'm glad something good came out of this ugly situation." "Several good things, actually," Dr. Lawrence corrected her. "We avoided a disastrous business partnership. We reinforced our company's commitment to ethical principles, and we're establishing a new foundation program for artists overcoming barriers." Victoria laughed. "Only you could turn a viral racial incident into a productive business decision and a new philanthropic initiative." Her father's expression turned serious. "Don't minimize what happened, Victoria. What that girl experienced was real and harmful. The fact that positive outcomes emerged doesn't erase the ugliness of the initial act." "You're right, I'm sorry," she said, sobering. "It's just, I'm proud of you, Dad. Not every CEO would have walked away from a billion-dollar deal on principle." Dr. Lawrence's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Victoria. "Just saw the news about Foster Financial. Proud of you, Dad." He looked up confused to see his daughter grinning as she put her phone away. "Just wanted it on the record," she explained with a wink. The simple message brought a smile to his face. His daughter's approval meant more to him than any business deal ever could. She had always been his moral compass, challenging him to live up to the values he espoused. "Hungry?" he asked, closing his laptop. "I imagine airplane food hasn't improved since I last checked." "Starving," Victoria admitted. "And I want to hear more about this cellist while we eat." As they headed toward the kitchen, Dr. Lawrence felt a sense of completion. The day's decisions, though difficult, had been right. Foster Financial would recover, perhaps even emerge stronger under new leadership. Olivia Jackson would continue her musical journey, hopefully, with the support of his foundation. And he had done what he had always tried to teach Victoria to do: prioritize principles over profit, character over convenience. In the grand scheme of things, a billion-dollar deal was just money. Character, as he had told Olivia, was a choice. Today, he had chosen well. The morning after her audition, Olivia woke to a notification that her return flight had been delayed by 3 hours. After a momentary panic, she realized this meant she had unexpected free time in New York, a luxury she hadn't anticipated. On impulse, she decided to use it to visit the Lincoln Center to see the place where she hoped to be performing one day. The driver, who had been arranged by Dr. Lawrence, was happy to accommodate her request, even offering to store her luggage and cello safely in the car while she explored. "Take your time," he assured her. "I'll be right here when you're ready to go to the airport." Lincoln Center was magnificent in the morning light, its grand architecture and open plaza speaking to the revered place of arts in the cultural landscape. Olivia stood in the center, turning slowly to take it all in. The Metropolitan Opera House, the New York Philharmonic, and of course Juilliard. This was the epicenter of classical music in America, perhaps the world, and she allowed herself to imagine belonging here, walking these spaces as a student, a performer, an artist. She was so absorbed in her thoughts that she didn't notice the young woman approaching until she spoke. "Excuse me, are you Olivia Jackson?" Startled. Olivia turned to find a woman about 10 years her senior, dressed in business casual attire, a press badge hanging around her neck. "Yes," Olivia admitted cautiously. "I'm Rebecca Torres from the New York Times Arts section," the woman said with a warm smile. "I was hoping to speak with you about your Juilliard audition and, well, the circumstances that brought you here. Would you have a few minutes to talk?" Olivia hesitated. She hadn't expected to be recognized, especially not by a journalist. "I'm not sure if I should be giving interviews." "I completely understand," Rebecca assured her. "And if you're uncomfortable, please say so. But I'm not interested in sensationalizing what happened on that plane. I'm interested in you, a young artist at the beginning of what could be a remarkable journey. The viral incident is just the context, not the story." Something in the woman's sincere approach resonated with Olivia. "How did you find me?" she asked. Rebecca smiled. "Educated guess. Most visiting musicians make a pilgrimage to Lincoln Center. Plus, I saw your audition yesterday. I was covering the Reynolds Foundation selections." Olivia's eyes widened. "You were there?" "In the back row," Rebecca confirmed. "Your Bach was extraordinary." The genuine compliment helped ease Olivia's reservations. "I suppose I could talk for a few minutes, but I can't be late for my flight." "Of course," Rebecca agreed. "Why don't we sit over there?" She gestured to a bench in a quieter corner of the plaza. As they walked, Rebecca explained her angle. "I'm writing a piece about young classical musicians and the challenges they face, financial, cultural, personal. Your situation has an added dimension now, with this unexpected attention." Olivia nodded thoughtfully as they sat. "It's strange. 2 days ago I was just a girl with a cello and a dream. Now I'm a hashtag. How does that feel?" Rebecca asked, taking out a small recorder with Olivia's permission. "Surreal," Olivia admitted. "I didn't do anything special on that plane. I just existed, and somehow that became a statement." "But how you existed, with such dignity in the face of ugliness, that was remarkable," Rebecca observed. "Especially for someone your age." Olivia thought about this. "I've had practice," she said finally. "Being a black girl in classical music spaces, you learn to navigate other people's perceptions and prejudices. You learn when to speak up and when silence is more powerful. What happened on that plane was just a more extreme version of things I've experienced before." "Like what?" Rebecca asked gently. Olivia hesitated, then decided to share. "When I was 12, I was invited to perform in a youth concert series at a prestigious venue in Atlanta. I arrived early to practice, and the security guard stopped me at the stage door. He insisted I must be lost, that the community outreach program was in another building. He couldn't conceive that I might be one of the featured performers." Rebecca's expression showed genuine empathy. "How did you handle that?" "I showed him the program with my name on it," Olivia said with a small smile. "He let me in, but he never apologized, just muttered something about how I didn't look like a cellist." "And now you're at Juilliard auditioning for one of the most prestigious music programs in the world," Rebecca noted. "How did you get here, not just physically, but in your journey as a musician?" For the next 20 minutes, Olivia found herself opening up about her life. Her single mother working double shifts to pay for lessons, her first cello teacher at the community center who recognized her talent, the hours of practice before dawn and after homework, the sacrifices and the joys of pursuing her passion. "Music was always my sanctuary," she explained. "When I play, nothing else matters. Not what I'm wearing, not what anyone thinks of me, not where I come from. There's just the music, and it's pure." Rebecca nodded, clearly moved. "And what happens next after the audition, after the viral video? Where does Olivia Jackson go from here?" Olivia looked up at the Juilliard building gleaming in the morning sun. "Hopefully right there if I get accepted. But regardless, I keep playing. I keep working. One moment, good or bad, doesn't define your entire journey." As they concluded the interview, Rebecca thanked her sincerely. "You know, in my line of work, I meet a lot of people who are famous for all sorts of reasons. But rarely do I meet someone who handles unexpected attention with such maturity and perspective. Whatever happens with Juilliard, I have a feeling we'll be hearing a lot more from you in the future, Olivia Jackson." They exchanged contact information with Rebecca, promising to let Olivia review any quotes before publication. As they parted ways, Olivia felt a surprising sense of empowerment. Telling her story on her own terms had helped her reclaim the narrative that had spun so wildly out of her control. She made her way back to the waiting car, her step lighter despite the weight of her experiences. The driver greeted her with a smile, helping her into the vehicle for the ride to LaGuardia. The airport was bustling with the usual chaos of departures and arrivals, but Olivia noticed something different this time. Occasional double takes from strangers, whispered conversations, phones discreetly raised in her direction. Her viral moment had followed her here too. She kept her head high, focusing on the gate information and the mundane details of travel rather than the stairs. At security, a TSA agent did a subtle double-take before checking her ID. "You're the cello girl from the video, aren't you?" he asked quietly. Olivia nodded, bracing herself for whatever might come next. To her surprise, the agent's stern expression softened. "My daughter saw that video. She's 12, plays violin. Told me she wants to be strong like you if anyone ever tries to make her feel small. You made an impression." Before Olivia could respond, he waved her through with a respectful nod. The brief exchange left her momentarily speechless. The idea that her ordeal had somehow inspired someone else's daughter felt both strange and profound, a ripple effect she never could have anticipated. At her gate, Olivia found a quiet corner and pulled out her phone to call her mother. She needed the grounding that only Evelyn Jackson's voice could provide. "Hey, Mom," she said when her mother answered. "I'm at the airport heading home soon." "Oh, baby, I can't wait to see you," Evelyn replied warmly. "How was Lincoln Center?" Olivia described her morning, including the unexpected interview. "Is it okay that I talked to a reporter? I probably should have asked you first." "Olivia, you're handling this better than most adults would," her mother assured her. "I trust your judgment. Just remember that you don't owe your story to anyone. You get to decide what to share and what to keep private." "I know," Olivia said, grateful for her mother's unwavering support. "I think it helped, actually, talking about it on my terms." They chatted about her delayed flight and plans for the evening once she returned to Atlanta. As they were about to hang up, Evelyn's voice became more serious. "Olivia, there's something you should know before you get home," she said carefully. "There's been some attention here, too. A local news station called the house. A few reporters showed up at my workplace. Your school principal called to check if you needed any support when you return." Olivia felt a cold knot form in her stomach. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to affect you." "Don't you dare apologize," Evelyn said firmly. "None of this is your fault. You were just existing, baby girl. They were the ones who made it a thing." The echo of her own words to the reporter made Olivia smile despite her concern. "What did you tell the news people? That my daughter is a brilliant musician focused on her education and her art, and that's the only story I'm interested in telling," Evelyn replied with a hint of fierce maternal pride. "They can take their sensationalism elsewhere." After hanging up, Olivia sat quietly processing everything. The incident on the plane had created concentric circles of impact, first affecting her directly, then Dr. Lawrence and the Fosters, now her mother, and potentially her school. The ripples kept spreading, touching lives in ways she couldn't have imagined. Her phone buzzed with a notification. It was from Tyler Kim, the tech blogger whose video had started it all. "Olivia, hope it's okay that I found you on social media. Just wanted to say I'm sorry if my video caused you any distress. It wasn't about exploiting what happened to you, but about holding those people accountable. If you want me to take it down, just say the word. All the best with your music. Tyler." The message touched her. She hadn't considered that the person behind the viral video might be concerned about her well-being. She typed a thoughtful reply. "Tyler, thank you for reaching out. No need to take down the video. What happened happened. Maybe it needed to be seen. I'm doing okay and focusing on my music. Thank you for your support. Olivia." As she sent the message, she realized it was true. She was okay. More than okay, actually. Despite the chaos, the attention, the disruption to her carefully planned journey, she felt strangely centered. The audition had gone well. Lawrence had recognized something in her beyond her playing. She had told her story on her own terms to the New York Times. And now she was heading home to her mother's embrace, to the familiar routine of practice and school and ordinary life. The flight back to Atlanta was uneventful. No Fosters, no confrontations, no drama. Just the mundane miracle of human flight. Olivia spent the time with her eyes closed, mental fingers moving through Bach's intricate patterns, the music a constant amidst the changing circumstances of her life. When they landed, she texted her mother that they had arrived safely, collected her precious cello from the flight attendants with profuse thanks, and made her way to baggage claim. As she emerged into the arrivals area, she saw Evelyn Jackson standing there, arms open, wide eyes shining with pride and love. Olivia rushed into her mother's embrace, the cello case bumping awkwardly against their legs, neither of them caring. "My baby," Evelyn whispered fiercely. "My brilliant, brave, beautiful girl." In that moment, surrounded by her mother's arms in the middle of a busy airport, Olivia felt the full circle of her journey, from anxiety to humiliation to triumph to homecoming. Whatever came next, Juilliard, the scholarship, the fading echo of viral fame, this was her constant, the love that had nurtured her talent, the support that had made her dreams possible, the strength that had taught her to face ugliness with dignity. As they walked to the car, arms-linked Evelyn asked the question Olivia had been anticipating. "So, tell me everything about the audition. Every detail." And Olivia did, letting the story of her music take center stage once more exactly where it belonged. The week following the incident on Flight 782 marked the beginning of a profound transformation for Douglas and Elizabeth Foster. What had started as a public relations disaster had quickly evolved into something more personally challenging. A forced confrontation with their own values, beliefs, and behavior. By Monday morning, Douglas had been officially removed as CEO of Foster Financial through a unanimous board vote. The press release cited leadership concerns and actions incompatible with company values, corporate euphemisms for his very public display of prejudice. His severance package, once guaranteed to be worth millions, had been slashed to the bare minimum legally required under his contract with the board, citing moral turpitude clauses that had never before been invoked. Major clients began pulling their investments from Foster Financial, triggering a significant exodus that threatened the company's stability. The stock continued its downward slide, losing over 40% of its value in 3 trading days. Longtime business partners publicly distanced themselves, canceling deals and scrubbing their websites of any association with the Foster name. By Wednesday, the upscale private school where Elizabeth served as a trustee had not only accepted her voluntary resignation from the board, but had also sent a letter to parents reaffirming their commitment to diversity and inclusion, an implicit repudiation of the Fosters' behavior. The same day, their country club membership was suspended, pending review effectively barring them from the social hub where they had once held court. Thursday delivered perhaps the most personal blow yet, an email from the wedding planner for their son Michael's upcoming nuptials, regretfully informing them that the bride's family had requested they not attend the ceremony to avoid any additional media attention that might detract from the couple's special day. Their own son's wedding had become yet another space where they were no longer welcome. By Friday, Douglas and Elizabeth found themselves virtual prisoners in their Westchester mansion blinds, drawn against the occasional news van that still kept vigil at the end of their driveway. Their phones had gone silent, the flood of calls from former friends and associates having dwindled to nothing as the social ostracism solidified. Elizabeth sat in their cavernous living room, scrolling through social media on her tablet, a form of self-flagellation she couldn't seem to stop despite the pain it caused. Every post, every comment, every analysis of their behavior cut like a knife. "They're calling it Foster syndrome now," she said hollowly as Douglas entered the room looking haggard and years older than he had just a week before. It's become shorthand for entitled white privilege exposed. Douglas didn't respond. He poured himself a small glass of scotch from the crystal decanter on the sidebar. His first of the day, though, in days past he might already have had several. He had spent the morning on the phone with their financial advisors, getting a clearer picture of exactly how devastating the past week had been to their net worth. "The Carmichael Gala is tonight," Elizabeth continued, her voice distant. "We've attended every year for the past decade, co-chaired it twice. I had a new gown made specially." Douglas swirled his scotch, watching the amber liquid catch the light. "Call them and see if they'll refund the donation," he said without looking up. Elizabeth stared at him, hurt evident in her eyes. "Douglas, that's not the point. Don't you understand what's happening to us? We're being erased. Everything we built, every relationship, every position we held in the community, it's all gone." "Not everything." Douglas replied, his tone softer than she expected. "We still have each other. Our children, despite their current anger. Our health. Our home, for now at least." Elizabeth looked away, tears threatening. "For how long? How long before we lose everything?" "Maybe losing everything wouldn't be the worst outcome," Douglas said quietly. "Maybe we need to lose it all to find out what actually matters." Elizabeth looked at him with genuine surprise. This philosophical tone was entirely unlike the hard-charging businessman she had been married to for 30 years. "Who are you right now?" she asked, only half joking. Douglas gave a humorless laugh. "I wish I knew. I thought I was Douglas Foster, CEO, financier success story. Now I'm just a man who's lost almost everything because he couldn't be decent to a teenage girl on a plane." The brutal simplicity of his statement hung in the air between them. "It wasn't just the plane," Elizabeth admitted after a moment. "It was everything. The way we've always been. The things we've always said behind closed doors." She set down her tablet, finally looking directly at him. "We're those people, aren't we? The ones everyone despises." Before Douglas could answer, his phone rang. A rare event these days. He glanced at it disinterestedly, then froze, his expression shifting to one of shock. "What is it?" Elizabeth asked, noting the change. "It's from Michael Lawrence," Douglas said, hardly believing it. "He wants to meet, tomorrow, at his office in the city." Elizabeth set down her tablet, suddenly alert. "Michael Lawrence. After everything? Why would he want to see you now?" "I don't know," Douglas admitted, rereading the brief message. "He just says there's something we need to discuss in person." "You can't go," Elizabeth said immediately. "It's a trap. He wants to humiliate you further, to twist the knife." Douglas considered this possibility. It seemed plausible. Lawrence had already cost him $1 billion deal and effectively ended his career. What more could he want? Maybe, he conceded. "But I'm going anyway." "Why?" Elizabeth demanded. Douglas met her gaze directly, something he had found difficult to do since their downfall began. "Because I have nothing left to lose. And because maybe I need to hear whatever he has to say." The next morning found Douglas in the back of a hired car, his own driver having been among the luxuries recently eliminated, heading into Manhattan. He had dressed carefully in one of his best suits armor for what might well be an unpleasant confrontation. As the car navigated the crowded streets toward the gleaming Innovate Global headquarters, he rehearsed what he might say, how he might defend himself or appeal to Lawrence's sense of proportion. But when he was finally shown into Lawrence's expansive corner office, all prepared statements fled his mind. The man who had been his prospective business partner just a week ago now regarded him with a calm, evaluative gaze that made Douglas feel like a specimen under a microscope. "Mr. Foster," Dr. Lawrence said, rising from behind his desk to shake hands formally. "Thank you for coming." "Dr. Lawrence," Douglas replied stiffly, "your message was unexpected." "I imagine it was. Lawrence agreed, gesturing toward a seating area with comfortable chairs arranged around a low table. "Please sit down. Can I offer you coffee? Water?" The civility was almost more disconcerting than hostility would have been. Douglas declined the refreshments and took a seat waiting for Lawrence to reveal the purpose behind this strange meeting. Dr. Lawrence settled into a chair opposite him, studying him thoughtfully. "I've been following the aftermath of the incident on Flight 782 with great interest," he began. "Your public disgrace, the collapse of Foster Financial, the social ostracism. It's been quite thorough, hasn't it?" Douglas felt a flash of anger at the dispassionate assessment of his ruin. "If you called me here to gloat—" "Not at all," Lawrence interrupted smoothly. "I called you here because I'm curious about something. In all the coverage, all the analysis, all the commentary on your behavior, I haven't seen a single statement from you that suggests genuine remorse. Plenty of damage control, yes, but no real acknowledgement of the harm you caused." Douglas shifted uncomfortably. "What do you expect me to say? That I'm sorry it was caught on video, that I regret the consequences? Those would be true statements, but hardly the soul-searching contrition the public seems to want." "What about regret for the action itself?" Lawrence asked quietly. "Not for being caught, not for the fallout, but for the basic human indignity you inflicted on a 16-year-old girl whose only crime was existing in a space you felt entitled to control." The direct question landed like a physical blow. Douglas had been asked variations of it by lawyers, by PR consultants, by board members, but never with such simple, penetrating clarity. "Yes," he admitted finally, the word feeling foreign on his tongue. "Yes, I regret that. More than I can express." Lawrence nodded, seeming satisfied with the answer. "That's a start," he said. "A small one, but genuine, I think." He reached for a folder on the table between them and opened it, revealing what appeared to be financial documents. "Now to business. I have a proposition for you, Mr. Foster. One that might offer a path forward from the wreckage you currently find yourself in." Douglas stared at him in disbelief. "A business proposition, after you terminated our deal and publicly condemned me?" "This isn't a business proposition," Lawrence corrected him. "It's a redemption proposition." He slid the folder across the table. Inside was a detailed proposal for a new initiative, the Foster Foundation for Arts Accessibility, with an initial funding commitment of $50 million. "What is this?" Douglas asked, scanning the document in confusion. "An opportunity," Lawrence replied simply, "to transform your very public fall from grace into something constructive. The foundation would provide resources, mentorship, and opportunities to talented young artists from underserved communities, particularly those facing barriers of race, class, and prejudice." The irony was not lost on Douglas. "You want me to fund a foundation named after me that would help people I showed contempt for? The public would see right through it." "Perhaps initially," Lawrence acknowledged. "But actions speak louder than words over time. And this wouldn't be a one-time donation for good publicity. This would be your new life's work, using your remaining resources and business acumen to create genuine opportunities for those you once dismissed." Douglas looked up from the proposal, studying Lawrence's face for signs of mockery or manipulation. He found none, just a steady, evaluative gaze. "Why?" he asked finally. "Why offer me any kind of lifeline after what I did, after you terminated our deal?" "Because I believe in the possibility of genuine change," Lawrence said simply, "even for people who have failed as spectacularly as you have. The question is, do you?" It was a profound question, one that cut to the heart of who Douglas Foster was and who he might yet become. The easy answer would be yes, of course, especially sitting across from a man offering him a potential path to redemption. But Lawrence deserved more than easy answers. "I don't know," Douglas admitted, the honesty costing him. "I'd like to think so, but a lifetime of privilege and entitlement doesn't vanish overnight, does it?" "No," Lawrence agreed. "It doesn't. which is precisely why this would be meaningful work, for you as much as for the recipients of the Foundation's support. He leaned forward slightly, his gaze intensifying. Let me be clear, Mr. Foster. This isn't charity toward you. This is a challenge. The Foundation would be structured with an independent board, rigorous oversight, and clear metrics for success. You would be the founder and public face, but you would answer to others, many of whom would come from the very communities you've historically disregarded. The proposal was simultaneously humbling and strangely appealing, a chance to rebuild from the ashes with purpose rather than simply retreating into bitter isolation. I'll need time to think about this, Douglas said finally, and to discuss it with Elizabeth. Of course. Lawrence nodded, rising to indicate the meeting was concluding. Take a week. But know this, whatever you decide that young woman you tried to humiliate on the plane, Olivia Jackson, she's going to be just fine. She auditioned at Juilliard the day after your encounter. She was brilliant. Douglas absorbed this information silently. The girl had a name, a talent, a future, things he had never considered when he'd looked at her on the plane and seen only an inconvenience and intrusion in his privileged space. As Douglas stood to leave, a question that had been nagging at him finally emerged. You were on that flight, weren't you? You saw the whole thing firsthand. I was, Lawrence confirmed. In first class across from Ms. Jackson after she was upgraded. I witnessed both your behavior and her dignity in response to it. And yet you're offering me this second chance, Douglas said, still struggling to understand. Lawrence's expression remained composed, but his eyes were sharp with conviction. I believe in justice, Mr. Foster, but I also believe in possibility. Sometimes the most powerful form of justice isn't punishment, but transformation. The question is whether you're capable of that transformation. It was a question that followed Douglas Foster out of the Innovate Global building into the hired car and all the way back to Westchester. A question that would define whatever remained of his life after his very public fall. When he arrived home, Elizabeth was waiting anxiously. Well, she demanded as soon as he entered. What did he want? Was it as bad as we feared? Douglas set his briefcase down slowly. No, he said thoughtfully. It wasn't what I expected at all. He explained Lawrence's proposal, watching his wife's expressions shift from confusion to disbelief to cautious interest. He's offering us a way back, Elizabeth said when he had finished. A path to... What redemption? Maybe, Douglas replied. Or maybe just a path to becoming better people than we've been. Elizabeth was quiet for a long moment. I don't know if I can do it, she admitted finally. Face the public again. Work with people who hate us. Be humble after a lifetime of not being humble. I don't know if I can either, Douglas said honestly. But I think we owe it to ourselves to try. And maybe we owe it to that girl, Olivia. Elizabeth met his gaze, and for the first time in days there was a glimmer of something other than despair in her eyes. It won't be easy. No, Douglas agreed. It will probably be the hardest thing we've ever done. But what's the alternative? Hiding in this house until we die, bitter and alone. They sat together in silence, contemplating the crossroads before them. The path of least resistance would be to retreat to nurse their grievances, to blame others for their downfall. The path Lawrence had offered was steep, uncertain, and would require genuine change. If we do this, Elizabeth said finally, we have to mean it, really mean it. No shortcuts, no public relations stunts. Real change. Douglas reached for her hand, surprised by the determination in her voice. You're right. If we're going to rebuild, it has to be on a better foundation than the one we had before. The conversation continued late into the night, not just about Lawrence's proposal, but about the deeper questions it raised. Who were they really beneath the wealth and status? What did they truly value? What kind of legacy did they want to leave? By morning, they had reached a tentative decision. They would accept Lawrence's challenge, not because it offered social rehabilitation, but because it offered purpose, a chance to use their considerable resources and skills to actually contribute something meaningful to the world. Douglas called Lawrence's office and left a message. We'd like to move forward with the foundation proposal. Not for publicity, but for principle. We have a lot to learn, and we're ready to begin. It was a small step on what would be a long and difficult journey. There would be skepticism, setbacks, moments of doubt and frustration. But for the first time since the video had gone viral, the Fosters were looking forward rather than back, focusing on what they could build rather than what they had lost. The public judgment would continue. Some would never forgive them, and perhaps they didn't deserve forgiveness. But through the foundation, they might at least ensure that something positive emerged from their very public disgrace. Opportunities for young artists who would otherwise be overlooked, resources for talents that might otherwise go undeveloped. It wasn't redemption, not yet, but it was a beginning. 3 weeks after her audition at Juilliard, Olivia sat at her desk in her bedroom in Atlanta trying to focus on her calculus homework. The equations blurred before her eyes as her mind continually drifted to the thick envelope sitting unopened on her bed, the envelope bearing the Juilliard crest that had arrived in that afternoon's mail. Her mother had called from the hospital during her shift, her voice vibrating with excitement. "It came, Olivia. The big envelope from Juilliard. I left it on your bed." Conventional wisdom held that thick envelopes meant acceptance, thin ones, rejection. But Olivia couldn't bring herself to open it yet. As long as it remained sealed, possibility existed in perfect suspension. Neither success nor failure, just pure potential. Her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend, Jade. "Have you opened it yet?" Followed immediately by another, "OMG, stop torturing yourself and just look." Olivia smiled despite her anxiety. Jade had been nearly as invested in this audition as she was having listened to Olivia practice the Bach suite countless times in preparation. "Mom's not home yet," she texted back. "Waiting for her." The truth was more complicated. Yes, she wanted to share the moment with her mother, but she also feared that the contents wouldn't live up to their hopes. The past 3 weeks had been a strange limbo, returning to her normal life at school while still dealing with the ripple effects of her viral moment. Most of her teachers and classmates had been supportive, but the attention had been uncomfortable. Some treated her like a celebrity, others with a new wariness, as if her brush with fame had somehow fundamentally changed who she was. She had given exactly one interview to the local newspaper, politely declined all others, and focused on what had always centered her, her music. Through it all, the uncertainty of Juilliard loomed. Had her audition truly been as strong as she felt? Would the Reynolds Foundation Scholarship Committee see in her what Dr. Lawrence seemed to? Or had the whole flight incident somehow colored their judgment for better or worse? She picked up her phone again and noticed a text from Dr. Lawrence that had come through while she was at school. "Today is a day for celebration. Trust your work and open the envelope. ML." Her heart began racing. How did he know today was the day? Did that mean what she thought it meant? Her mother's key turned in the lock of their apartment door, and Olivia heard her calling out, "I'm home. Have you opened it yet?" Evelyn Jackson appeared in the doorway of Olivia's bedroom, still in her nursing scrubs, her face tired but lit with anticipation. "Not yet," Olivia said, rising from her desk. "I was waiting for you." Her mother embraced her tightly. "Whatever it says, I am so proud of you," she whispered fiercely. They went to the envelope together, sitting side by side on Olivia's bed. The package felt heavy in her hand, substantial with possibility. Evelyn squeezed her daughter's hand encouragingly. "Remember what you always say before recitals?" Her mother prompted gently. "The work is already done," Olivia recited. This is just showing what I already know. Exactly. Now open it. With trembling fingers, Olivia broke the seal and carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a folder containing several documents. The first was a formal letter on Juilliard letterhead. Dear Ms. Jackson, it is with great pleasure that we offer you acceptance to the Juilliard School Pre-College Division for the upcoming academic year. Olivia's breath caught in her throat as she scanned the words. She handed the letter to her mother, who read it quickly, then let out a joyful cry. You did it! Evelyn exclaimed, pulling Olivia into a fierce embrace. You did it, baby girl. They clung to each other, laughing and crying at once. The culmination of years of sacrifice and dedication crystallized in this single moment of triumph. When they finally separated, Evelyn wiped her eyes and gestured to the other documents in the folder. What else does it say? Olivia pulled out the next paper, this one on Reynolds Foundation stationery. Her heart seemed to stop as she read the opening paragraph. The Reynolds Foundation is pleased to inform you that you have been selected as a recipient of the full Performing Arts Grant, covering all tuition room board and living expenses for your studies at the Juilliard School. Mom, she whispered, hardly daring to believe it. I got the scholarship. The full scholarship. Evelyn's hands flew to her mouth. The full... Oh my God, Olivia. The financial reality of Juilliard had always loomed like a shadow over Olivia's dream. Even with partial scholarships and financial aid, the cost would have strained their resources to the breaking point, potentially requiring crippling loans. The Reynolds Foundation grant removed that burden entirely, transforming an impossible dream into a tangible future. As Olivia continued reading the scholarship letter, she came to a handwritten note at the bottom. Olivia, the committee's decision was unanimous based solely on your exceptional musicality. This scholarship, however, reflects our confidence not just in your talent, but in your character and resilience. Your music has a story to tell, and we are honored to help you tell it. Welcome to Juilliard. Welcome to your future. Dr. Michael Lawrence. Tears fell freely now as Olivia passed the note to her mother. He remembered, she said softly. He kept his word. Evelyn read the note, her own eyes filling again. Of course he did, she said. He saw what I've always seen in you, something special that goes beyond just playing the notes. They spent the next hour going through the rest of the documents, information about the pre-college program, housing options, course schedules. It was overwhelming and exhilarating all at once, the future taking concrete shape with each page. Olivia's phone buzzed repeatedly with texts from Jade and other friends, all demanding updates. Finally, she responded with a simple message to their group chat. I got in, and the full scholarship. Dreams do come true. The responses were immediate and jubilant. Exclamation points, heart emojis, demands for celebration. Jade called immediately, screaming with excitement, already planning a party to commemorate the acceptance. Amidst the flurry of congratulations, a text arrived from an unknown number. Olivia, this is Carmen Diaz from Flight 782. I hope you don't mind. I asked someone at the airline to help me get your contact information. I just wanted to say how thrilled I am to hear about your acceptance to Juilliard. The news is spreading through our crew like wildfire. You've become something of a legend among us. Fly high, play beautifully, and never let anyone dim your light. Carmen. The unexpected message brought fresh tears to Olivia's eyes. The connection to that pivotal moment on the plane, a moment that had started with humiliation but ended with unexpected doors opening, felt like the closing of a circle. Later that evening, after the initial excitement had settled into a warm glow of contentment, Olivia took out her cello. Without sheet music, without consciously deciding what to play, she began the opening notes of Bach's Cello Suite No. 1. The piece that had carried her through the audition, the piece that had become in many ways the soundtrack to this transformative chapter of her life. This time she approached the challenging third movement differently. Instead of attacking the difficult passage with technical precision, she allowed her emotional journey to guide her interpretation. The section that had once given her trouble now flowed with newfound meaning, the notes speaking of struggle, resistance, and ultimately triumph. Her bow danced across the strings with both technical mastery and emotional depth, creating a sound that was uniquely hers. Each phrase breathed with life, each transition flowed naturally into the next. Her left hand shifted positions with balletic grace, her fingertips pressing into the strings with just the right combination of strength and sensitivity. The rich, resonant tones filled their small apartment, each note vibrating with emotion. Gratitude, triumph, hope, determination. She played not as she had in the audition, with technical precision and careful control, but freely, expressively letting the music become a vehicle for all the feelings that words couldn't adequately capture. From the doorway, Evelyn watched her daughter, tears silently tracking down her cheeks. This was what all the sacrifices had been for. Not just admission to a prestigious school, not just a scholarship, but this moment of pure artistic expression, this gift that Olivia could now share with the world. As the final notes faded into silence, Evelyn spoke softly. "That was for you, wasn't it? Not for judges or audiences or scholarships. Just for you." Olivia nodded, understanding exactly what her mother meant. "Yes," she said, carefully setting down her bow. "That was my thank you to the music, for always being there even when nothing else made sense." It was a profound realization that beyond the accolades, beyond the opportunities, beyond even the scholarship, her relationship with music itself was the true constant, the true gift. Juilliard would help her develop that gift, refine it, share it with wider audiences. But the essential connection had been there all along, from the first time she had drawn a bow across strings and felt something awaken inside her. That night, as she finally drifted toward sleep, Olivia's thoughts returned to the plane, to the Fosters, with their contempt and entitlement to Carmen, with her quiet strength to Dr. Lawrence, with his unexpected alliance. What had started as an ordeal had somehow become a catalyst, pushing her journey forward in ways she never could have anticipated. The Fosters had tried to make her feel small, to reduce her to something less than human based on the color of her skin. Instead, they had inadvertently helped reveal the depth of her resilience, the strength of her character, the breadth of her potential. It wasn't about revenge or karma or justice, Olivia realized as sleep finally claimed her. It was about transformation, about how moments of challenge could become opportunities for growth, about how even the ugliest encounters could lead to unexpected blessings. Tomorrow there would be plans to make, preparations to begin, a future to embrace. But tonight, in the quiet darkness of her room, surrounded by the lingering echoes of Bach and the warm certainty of her acceptance, Olivia Jackson rested in the knowledge that she had not just survived a trial, she had transcended it. And in that transcendence, she had found not just a path to Juilliard, but a deeper understanding of herself and her music. An understanding that would serve her long after the viral video was forgotten, long after the scholarship had been spent, long after the Fosters had faded from memory. The music would remain, and so would she, playing it with all the dignity, grace, and passion that defined not just her art, but her essence. 1 year later, Olivia sat in a practice room at Juilliard, her cello positioned between her knees as she worked through a particularly challenging passage from the Elgar Concerto. Her fingers moved with confident precision across the fingerboard, finding the notes with instinctive accuracy, born of countless hours of dedicated practice. The past year had been transformative in ways she could never have imagined when she first boarded Flight 782. The pre-college program had challenged and nurtured her talent beyond her expectations. She had grown not just as a musician, but as a person, finding her voice both through her instrument and in the diverse community of artists she now called friends. New York had become a second home, its frenetic energy and cultural richness a constant source of inspiration. The small apartment she shared with two other music students during term time was a far cry from the comfort of her Atlanta home, but it had its own charm. The late-night impromptu chamber music sessions, the passionate discussions about interpretation and technique, the shared struggles and triumphs of young artists finding their way. Her mother had visited whenever her nursing schedule allowed, marveling at the transformation in her daughter. Not just the refined technique and expanding repertoire, but the growing confidence, the emerging adult navigating a world that had once seemed impossibly distant. As Olivia paused to mark a fingering in her score, her phone buzzed with a notification. It was a reminder for tonight's Reynolds Foundation Scholars Showcase, her first formal performance since joining the program. She would be playing the first movement of the Elgar Concerto accompanied by piano. The thought sent a flutter of nervous excitement through her chest. She knew her mother would be there in the audience, having flown in specially for the event. Mr. Collins, her first teacher, would also be attending, his presence a powerful reminder of her journey's beginnings. And of course, Dr. Lawrence would be there, not just as the Foundation's director, but as the mentor who had helped make all of this possible. A knock at the practice room door interrupted her thoughts. It was Zoe, one of her roommates, a brilliant violinist from Chicago. "You've been in here for 3 hours straight," Zoe said with a mixture of admiration and concern. "You need to rest before tonight." Olivia smiled, stretching her fingers. "Just one more run-through." "Your Elgar is already incredible," Zoe insisted. "What you need now is to rest your hands and clear your mind. Come get lunch with us." Recognizing the wisdom in her friend's advice, Olivia carefully packed up her cello. As they walked through the Juilliard hallways together, she found herself reflecting on how much had changed in a single year. The viral video that had launched her into unexpected notoriety had gradually faded from public consciousness, replaced by newer outrages and sensations. Occasionally someone would make the connection, "Aren't you the cello girl from that plane video?" But those moments had become increasingly rare. What remained was the music, which had always been the point. Over lunch with Zoe and their other roommate Miguel, conversation flowed freely about that evening's showcase summer plans and the latest faculty gossip. These normal everyday interactions had become precious to Olivia, a reminder that she was more than the cello girl from the video, more than a symbol or a hashtag. Here she was, simply Olivia, a dedicated musician among peers who respected her for her talent and character. "Did you hear about the Foster Foundation's new initiative?" Miguel asked between bites of his sandwich. "They're funding a music education program in underserved schools across the country. My cousin's school in the Bronx just got 10 new cellos because of them." Olivia nodded, having followed the foundation's development with cautious interest over the past year. "I've heard they're doing good work," she said simply. What she didn't share was that she had received a letter from Douglas Foster 6 months earlier. Not a public gesture, not a photo opportunity, but a private handwritten apology that had seemed genuinely remorseful. She hadn't responded not out of spite, but because she wasn't sure what to say. The apology had been acknowledged internally, but reconciliation wasn't something she felt obligated to offer. After lunch, Olivia returned to her dorm to rest before the evening's performance. As she lay on her bed, she found herself thinking about the unexpected ripple effects that had emanated from that fateful flight. Carmen Diaz had been promoted to training director for the airline, implementing new anti-discrimination protocols that had become a model across the industry. Tyler Kim's video had launched him into prominence as a tech journalist focused on social justice issues. Sofia Alvarez, the woman who had defended her on the plane, had invited Olivia to the opening of a community arts center she'd designed in Atlanta, a space specifically created to make the arts more accessible to underserved communities. And then there were the Fosters. Their foundation had emerged from the ashes of their public disgrace funding programs that gave opportunities to young artists from backgrounds often overlooked by traditional institutions. Whether their transformation was genuine or merely a sophisticated form of image rehabilitation remained an open question, but the positive impact of their work was undeniable. Olivia's own life had changed in ways both obvious and subtle. Beyond the scholarship and acceptance to Juilliard, she had found a new confidence in her playing, a willingness to take risks to infuse her technical prowess with emotional depth. Her teachers had noticed this evolution, commenting on the maturity and authenticity she brought to her interpretations. "You play like someone who has lived," her primary instructor had told her recently. "That's rare in someone your age." A soft knock on her door roused her from her thoughts. It was her mother, who had arrived earlier that day and was staying in a nearby hotel courtesy of the Reynolds Foundation. "Just checking if you're awake," Evelyn said, coming to sit on the edge of the bed. "How are you feeling about tonight?" "Nervous," Olivia admitted, "but ready, I think." Evelyn brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead, a gesture so familiar it instantly transported Olivia back to childhood. "You've worked so hard for this. Just remember to breathe and let the music speak through you." "Will you help me get ready?" Olivia asked, "like you used to before my recitals back home." Her mother smiled, emotion shining in her eyes. "Of course, baby girl." The hours before the performance passed in a blur of preparation. A final rehearsal with the pianist changing into the simple but elegant black dress they had chosen together, Evelyn carefully braiding Olivia's hair in the intricate style that had become her signature for performances. As Olivia waited backstage cello at her side, she could hear the murmur of the audience gathering in the recital hall. Her fellow scholarship recipients moved around her, each absorbed in their own pre-performance rituals. A pianist silently moving her fingers through passages, a violinist adjusting his bow tension, a flutist breathing deeply with eyes closed. She peeked through the curtain, scanning the filled seats. She peeked through the curtain, scanning the filled seats. There was her mother in the front row, elegant in a new dress she had saved for months to buy. Beside her sat Mr. Collins, who had aged visibly since she'd last seen him, but whose eyes still held the same keen intelligence. A few rows back she spotted Dr. Lawrence, his expression attentive and expectant. And then, to her surprise, in a seat near the back, she saw Douglas Foster. He was alone, dressed conservatively, his demeanor subdued, a far cry from the arrogant man who had demanded she be moved on that plane a year ago. Their eyes met briefly across the distance. He gave a small, respectful nod, which she acknowledged with a slight inclination of her head, before stepping back from the curtain. His presence unsettled her briefly, but then she realized this was right somehow. The circle was completing itself. The journey that had begun with humiliation was culminating in triumph with witnesses from every chapter present. "Ms. Jackson, you're on in 5 minutes," the stage manager informed her quietly. Olivia nodded, taking her cello from its stand. She moved to a quiet corner to center herself, closing her eyes and running through her mental preparation ritual. She recalled her mother's words from a year ago, "You rise to challenges," and she had risen higher than either of them could have imagined. When her name was announced, she walked onto the stage with measured steps, acknowledging the applause with a graceful bow before taking her seat and positioning her cello. The lights felt warm on her face as she looked out over the audience. In the front row, her mother's eyes already shone with tears of pride. Mr. Collins nodded encouragingly, his hands folded in his lap. Dr. Lawrence watched with quiet attention, his expression one of respectful anticipation. Olivia nodded to her accompanist, took a deep breath, and began to play. The opening notes of the Elgar filled the hall, mournful, resonant, aching with emotion. Her bow moved across the strings with confidence and sensitivity, each phrase building on the last to create a narrative of longing loss and, ultimately, transcendence. As she played, Olivia felt herself entering that rare state where technique and emotion merged perfectly, where the years of practice, the countless hours of repetition, the technical challenges all dissolved into pure expression. The cello became not just an instrument, but an extension of her voice, speaking truths that words could never adequately convey. The audience faded from her awareness. There was only the music flowing through her like a current connecting her to something larger than herself. In this moment, she understood what her teachers had meant when they spoke of music as a universal language, a way of communicating across boundaries of time, culture, and experience. When the final note resonated through the hall, there was a moment of perfect silence, that magical pause between performance and response when the music seemed to hang in the air, still alive, still speaking. Then came the applause, warm and enthusiastic, washing over her like a wave. Olivia rose, bowing deeply to acknowledge the audience's appreciation. As she straightened, her eyes met her mother's. Evelyn was on her feet, tears streaming down her face, hands clapping with fierce pride. Beside her, Mr. Collins nodded, his expression conveying what words could not, the satisfaction of seeing potential fully realized, and Dr. Lawrence, typically reserved, was applauding with genuine enthusiasm, a smile of approval lighting his distinguished features. Backstage, after the showcase concluded, Olivia was surrounded by well-wishers, fellow students, faculty foundation representatives. But it was the embrace of her mother that meant the most, the familiar scent of her perfume bringing a rush of nostalgia for home, even amidst the excitement of this new chapter. "You were magnificent," Evelyn whispered fiercely. "Absolutely magnificent." Mr. Collins shook her hand with formal dignity, then surprised her by pulling her into a quick, awkward hug. "You've surpassed all my expectations," he said, his voice gruff with emotion. "And I had very high expectations indeed." Dr. Lawrence approached last after the others had moved on to the reception. "Ms. Jackson," he said with formal courtesy that didn't quite mask the warmth underneath, "your Elgar was exceptional. You've grown tremendously this year." "Thank you, Dr. Lawrence," Olivia replied, "for everything. Not just tonight, but for the opportunity, the guidance, the belief in me." He nodded, acknowledging the deeper meaning behind her words. "I have something to share with you." He said, his tone shifting to something more serious. "Something I thought you should know." Olivia tilted her head, curious. "Douglas Foster asked if he could attend tonight. I told him it was a public performance, but I wanted you to be aware of his presence." "I saw him," Olivia said quietly. "In the back row. And how did you feel about that?" Olivia considered the question carefully. "I'm not sure," she admitted. "Part of me is still angry about what happened, but another part recognizes that his foundation is doing good work. It's complicated." "Life often is," Dr. Lawrence said with a small smile. "You're under no obligation to engage with him, but he did ask if he could speak with you briefly after the performance. I told him it would be entirely your decision." Olivia was silent for a moment, weighing the option. I think I'd be willing to speak with him, briefly." Dr. Lawrence nodded. "He's in the small reception room down the hall. I'll have someone escort you when you're ready, if you decide to go." After he left, Olivia stood alone in the wings, considering her options. She didn't owe Douglas Foster anything. Certainly not forgiveness. Definitely not absolution. Yet something in her was curious about what he might say about who he might have become in the years since their lives had intersected so dramatically. She made her decision. After checking with her mother, who offered to accompany her but respected her wish to go alone. Olivia followed an usher to the small reception room. Douglas Foster stood as she entered, his posture tentative rather than imposing. "Ms. Jackson," he said formally, "thank you for agreeing to see me. Your performance was extraordinary." "Thank you," she replied, her tone neutral. "I won't take much of your time," he continued. "I just wanted to tell you in person what I tried to express in my letter. I am deeply, profoundly sorry for how I treated you that day on the plane. There's no excuse, no justification." Olivia studied him, noting the absence of the arrogance that had defined him a year ago. "Why are you here tonight, Mr. Foster, really?" "To witness," he said after a moment's thought, To see the remarkable young woman I once tried to diminish now shining in her fullness. To be reminded of the consequences of my actions, both the harm I caused and the unexpected good that emerged from it. He gestured toward a folder on the side table. Our foundation is funding a new music education initiative in Atlanta's public schools. The program will provide instruments instruction and performance opportunities to students who might otherwise never have access to musical training. We'd like to name it after your first teacher, Mr. Collins, with your permission. Olivia was taken aback by the request. Why ask me it's his name? Because it matters to me that you understand this isn't about publicity or image rehabilitation. It's about creating genuine opportunities for young musicians who face barriers that people like me have too often reinforced. There was a sincerity in his voice that Olivia hadn't expected. The Douglas Foster standing before her seemed humbled in a way that went beyond public contrition. I think Mr. Collins would be honored, she said finally. His program at the community center is what gave me my start when my mother couldn't afford private lessons. Foster nodded. Thank you. And thank you for your time tonight. I won't intrude on your celebration any further. As he turned to leave, Olivia found herself speaking. Mr. Foster. He paused, looking back at her. I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive what happened that day, she said honestly. But I do believe in the possibility of change, and I'm glad something positive has come from it all. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was acknowledgement of his efforts, of the complexity of redemption, of the unexpected ways that their paths had crossed and would continue to influence each other, however indirectly. That's more than I deserve, he replied quietly. Good luck with your studies, Ms. Jackson. Though from what I heard tonight, you hardly need luck. You have something far more valuable, genuine talent and the character to match it. After he left, Olivia rejoined her mother and friends at the main reception. As she moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations and engaging in conversation, she felt a strange sense of completion. The circle that had begun with humiliation on that plane had transformed into something else entirely, not just personal triumph, but a broader ripple effect that continued to expand outward. Later that night, back in her dorm room, Olivia sat by the window looking out at the New York skyline. Her cello rested beside her, a silent companion on this remarkable journey. She thought about Flight 782, about the Fosters with their contempt and entitlement, about Carmen, who had stood up for what was right about Dr. Lawrence, who had recognized something in her beyond her playing. She thought about her mother's sacrifices, Mr. Collins's early faith in her talent, the countless hours of practice that had led to tonight's performance. And she thought about the strange, unexpected ways that life unfolded, how moments of challenge could become catalysts for growth, how even the ugliest encounters could lead to transformation. As she drifted toward sleep, Olivia felt a sense of peace wash over her. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new music to master, new heights to reach. But tonight, in this moment, she was exactly where she was meant to be. Her journey continuing to unfold, her voice growing stronger with each passing day, her music speaking truths that transcended all barriers. 3 years later, Olivia Jackson stood in the wings of Carnegie Hall, listening to the swell of the orchestra as they prepared for her entrance. At 19, she had been selected as the featured soloist for the Young Artists Showcase, a remarkable honor that placed her among the most promising musicians of her generation. Her mother sat in the front row alongside Mr. Collins, who had recovered from a health scare the previous year and insisted on being present for this milestone. Dr. Lawrence and his wife occupied seats nearby, their continued mentorship having proved invaluable as Olivia navigated the transition from pre-college studies to full-time enrollment at Juilliard. In the 3 years since her first Reynolds Foundation performance, Olivia had flourished. Her technique had matured, her interpretations deepening with each passing year. Critics had begun to take notice, with one prominent reviewer describing her as a cellist of uncommon emotional depth and technical brilliance, whose playing speaks with an authenticity rarely heard in performers twice her age. The Foster Foundation for Arts Accessibility had indeed established the Collins Initiative in Atlanta, now providing music education to over 500 students in underserved schools. Elizabeth Foster had found unexpected purpose in coordinating the program, working closely with community leaders to ensure it truly served the needs of the students rather than imposing outside values. Douglas Foster had stepped back from public life, focusing on the foundation's work rather than his own rehabilitation. Their daughter Megan had gradually reconciled with her parents, witnessing their genuine efforts to change and contribute meaningfully to causes they had once overlooked. Carmen Diaz had implemented comprehensive anti-bias training across her airline, creating a culture shift that had reduced passenger complaints and improved employee satisfaction. She and Olivia still exchanged occasional messages, their unlikely friendship a reminder of how a single principled stand could change lives. As the conductor gave Olivia her cue, she stepped onto the Carnegie Hall stage, the weight of her cello comfortable in her hand, the applause washing over her like a wave. This moment, playing on one of the world's most prestigious stages, had once seemed an impossible dream. Now it was reality, not because of viral fame or a dramatic encounter, but because of her talent, her dedication, and the character she had built through years of perseverance. When she placed bow to string for the opening notes of the Dvorak cello concerto, Olivia played not just with technical precision, but with the full emotional range of her experiences. The struggles and triumphs, the setbacks and breakthroughs that had shaped her journey. The music flowed through her with transcendent power, reaching every corner of the hall, touching hearts, lifting spirits, bridging differences. In that moment on that stage, she was exactly where she belonged, not because of a viral video or a chance encounter, but because of every choice, every hour of practice, every obstacle overcome that had shaped her into the artist she had become. The music flowed through her with transcendent power, reaching every corner of the hall, touching hearts, lifting spirits, bridging differences. This was her true voice, and it was magnificent. If you've been inspired by Olivia's journey from discrimination to triumph, please take a moment to like this video and share it with others who might find strength in her story. Every person deserves to be treated with dignity, and every talent deserves the chance to flourish. Subscribe to our channel for more uplifting true stories that showcase the power of resilience, kindness, and justice in action.